Chapter 1444. As the spokesperson, Lin Ji was only endorsing one of Louis Vuitton's nectar series. She was the spokesperson for the entire nectar collection, from the clothes to the bags. The products she was the spokesperson for were only the tip of the iceberg. It looked glamorous, but it was just a product line under the brand. The value of the endorsement was very low. As for brand ambassador, it meant that she was the spokesperson for the entire brand. In other words, Louis Vuitton's only brand ambassador in the Greater China region was Gu Xingze. They had never had a female spokesperson before. Therefore, Lin Ji was already very pleased with herself after being the spokesperson for one product line. Then what is she here for? Lin Ji asked aggressively. Her gaze fell on Yun Shishir with evil intentions. Did she bring any products? Or was she invited by the brand? That's impossible. After all, the one who came all the way here just to get on the red carpet should be your artist. Ahem. Qinzhou was amused. Lin Ji was angry, but she tried to restrain herself. Am I wrong? I'm sorry. Our Shishir has received an invitation from the brand. As soon as Qinzhou finished speaking, Lin Ji said arrogantly, Impossible. He raised his eyebrows disapprovingly. What's impossible? How could she have received an invitation? She's just a newcomer. What right does she have to receive an invitation from the brand? Qinzhou looked past her impatiently. He did not want to waste any more time on her. He turned around and called out to Shishir, Shishir, come with me to choose your gown. With that, he entered the VIP lounge. Yun Shishir nodded. Just as she was about to follow her manager to the VIP area, Lin Ji's figure flashed and blocked her path. You're not allowed to enter. Yun Shishir's brows furrowed slightly as she raised her eyes to look at the arrogant Lin Ji blocking her way. She was a little surprised. What do you mean? Where's the invitation? Lin Ji opened her palm. Without an invitation, you don't have the right to step into this place. You don't even have the right to enter the VIP room. She had disliked her for a long time. Therefore, Lin Ji swore to teach her a lesson. She didn't want a newcomer who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She was her senior, but she didn't take her seriously. Of course, she had to teach her a lesson. Yun Shishir was neither angry nor shocked. She walked around her as if she did not hear her. Lin Ji was even angrier and blocked her way again. Where are you going? Senior Lin Ji, please step aside. Yun Shishir smiled politely. However, there was a faint smile on his face and a mocking look in his eyes. Lin Ji was completely enraged by her gaze. She blurted out, Go back. This is not a place for you to be. Who do you think you are? Do you really think you're a big shot? Yun Shishir ignored the sarcasm in her words, but the smile on her face slowly faded. When she looked up, her eyes were frosty as she stared at her coldly. Suddenly, she let out a mocking laugh. You're the one who thinks you're a big shot, right? Senior Lin Ji. Chapter 1445. Lin Ji laughed coldly and looked her up and down with disdain. She said expressionlessly, Ha! Some female stars are trying to use fashion resources to climb up the ranks. Yun Shishir, do you think I don't know what tricks you're playing? There are so many dirty newcomers like you in the entertainment industry. What wouldn't they do to climb up the ranks? Don't think I don't know about your dirty tricks. She paused and continued sarcastically. Do you think the fashion show is a market? You think you can come whenever you want? This is Fashion Week, not a place for you to play house. If you want to play, go home. Don't embarrass yourself here. She looked at Yun Shishir after she finished speaking, but there was no trace of anger on her face. The current her was truly unfazed by honor and disgrace. No matter how big the humiliation, she could face it calmly. Are you done talking? Yun Shirshir asked indifferently after Lin Ji finished speaking. It was as if she wasn't the one who had insulted her. You're really thick-skinned. The more Lin Ji looked at her nonchalant face, the angrier she got. She hated such an elegant and cold face the most. Just like that, she felt as if she was a clown jumping up and down with her hair standing on end after saying those humiliating words just now. She felt like she had become a joke. Indeed, Yun Shirshir looked at her as if she was looking at a joke. Lin Ji, speaking of thick-skinned, you've shown me what it means to lie through your teeth. Yun Shirshir's lips suddenly curled into a faint smile. Coupled with the makeup on her face, she looked like a graceful and elegant model of nobility, with a threatening air of nobility. She was half a head taller than Yun Shirshir. Hence, when Yun Shirshir imitated Lin Ji and raised her charming chin slightly, Lin Ji had no choice but to look up at her. This made her feel inferior to Yun Shirshir's aura. I received an invitation from the brand and came to watch the fashion show. If you have a problem with it, what's the use of looking for me? If you think I'm not good enough for the show, do you think you're good enough? After Yun Shirshir finished speaking, she coldly sized her up again. Then, a trace of disgust appeared on her face. In terms of temperament, I'm actually very suspicious. How did you become the spokesperson of Louis Vuitton? Comparing your temperament with mine? You must be joking. Her tone was extremely arrogant. She didn't try to hide her arrogance at all. She returned the humiliation that Lin Ji had just given her. Lin Ji flew into a rage out of humiliation. Her face turned red as she glared at him. What did you say? I said, in terms of temperament, you don't deserve to be compared to me. Yun Shirshir paused for a moment. Then she elegantly took out an invitation from her handbag and waved it in front of her. This is an invitation. Open your eyes and look carefully. Lin Ji saw it clearly. It was indeed an invitation from Louis Vuitton. Did she really get an invitation from Louis Vuitton? Lin Ji froze on the spot. Just as Yun Shirshir was about to enter the VIP room, Lin Ji suddenly clenched her fists and grabbed her arm. She said sharply, "So what if you got an invitation? Who knows if this invitation is real or fake?" Lin Ji, what do you want? Don't be rude. Chapter 1446. In that case, it's fine if you want to pick the gowns, but you'll have to wait until I'm done before you pick the rest. Yun Shirshir was instantly enraged by Lin Ji's words. Lin Ji's words were simple and straightforward. She wanted to express that she was the first to arrive, so she had the right to choose the gowns prepared by the brand first. Secondly, Yun Shirshir would get to pick the remaining gowns first. This was a huge humiliation. Lin Ji actually wanted her to pick the remaining gowns. Yun Shirshir's beautiful eyes widened in shock. She did not expect the other to make such an outrageous request so boldly. She coldly retorted, "On what basis?" "Why should I?" Yun Shirshir said expressionlessly. "Why should I let you pick first? Your words are too much." "Why should I?" "If you must ask why, then it's because my status is higher than yours. Because my net worth is higher than yours. Just based on these 2 points, you have to give in to me. Is this answer enough?" Lin Ji raised her head arrogantly. The space between her eyebrows was incomparably cold and aggressive, leaving no room for negotiation. Yun Shirshir's cold gaze fell on the hand that was holding her wrist tightly. She said coldly, "Let go." Chinjo walked out of the VIP room and saw this scene. His eyes flickered, and he rushed up and swatted Lin Ji's hand away. "Let go of your dirty hands. Don't touch our Shirshir." His protectiveness for Yun Shirshir was evident in his words and was on the verge of being revealed. Lin Ji took a few steps back in shock. She raised her head abruptly and looked at Chinjo in disbelief. She was obviously unwilling to accept this. "President Qin, what are you doing?" I should be asking you what you're doing. Keep your hands clean. Don't touch our Shirshir. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Qinzhou paused. He glared at her menacingly and said in a cold voice, Linji, was I too polite to you just now? Do you think I'm good-tempered and easy to talk to, so you're bullying my artist? I'm warning you, you better know your place. If you dare to bully Shirshir again, I won't forgive you. President Qin. Lin Ji cried out in surprise. Clearly, she found it hard to accept Qinzhou's harsh words. However, Qinzhou smiled coldly. I have many methods that are enough to ruin your reputation in one night. Linji, if you don't believe me, just wait and see. Today is the last chance I'm giving you. If I find out that you've bullied Shirshir again, don't blame me for being ruthless. After saying that, Qinzhou grabbed Yun Shirshir's hand and turned to enter the VIP room, leaving Linji standing there, dumbfounded and petrified. In the VIP room, Qinzhou poked Yun Shirshir's head angrily. Little idiot, why are you being bullied again when I'm not here for a while? Yun Shirshir was also a little depressed. She lowered her head and sulked. Qinzhou was still angry. If you meet that Lin Ji in the future, don't be polite. If she scolds you once, you'll scold her 10 times. If she touches one of your fingers, you'll break all 10 of her fingers. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility. Yun Shirshir was petrified. She couldn't help but look into the distance. How could she not tell that Qinzhou was such a violent person? Chapter 1447. Qinzhou was still angry. If you meet Lin Ji in the future, don't go easy on her. If she scolds you, you'll scold her back 10 times. If she touches one of your fingers, you'll break all 10 of her fingers. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility for it. Yun Shirshir was petrified. She couldn't help but look into the distance. How could she not tell that Qinzhou was such a violent person? There were 3 VIP rooms in Louis Vuitton's studio. Qinzhou had specially brought Yun Shirshir to the show early, so they took one room. Lin Ji took one room and started to urge the brand's representative to bring the gowns over so that she could pick first. Usually, one would have to change 2 or 3 outfits for a show. The bigger brands would have at least 4 outfits. Lin Ji was greedy and wanted to pick the best ones first, leaving the rest for Yun Shirshir to pick. However, would Qinzhou let her have her way? Impossible. Moreover, who was Qinzhou? In the past, when she was managing Guxingzi, she had the connections of all the big brands in her hands. If she wanted to pick a gown, she should let Yun Shirshir pick first, and Lin Ji would pick the rest. Moreover, Qinzhou had helped Yun Shirshir get the role of Louis Vuitton's brand ambassador in Greater China. Although this news hadn't been announced to the public yet, the contract had been officially signed. As the prospective ambassador, Louis Vuitton naturally had to create a good image for Yun Shirshir. Of course, Lin Ji didn't know about this. She really thought that Yun Shirshir had come all the way to the red carpet. If she knew that Yun Shirshir had accepted the invitation as the brand ambassador, she would be so angry that she would vomit blood. Therefore, when the representative of Louis Vuitton came over with the gowns, Lin Ji immediately went up to him and pretended to be reserved, saying that she wanted to pick the gown first. In the end, the representative politely said that she couldn't pick first. She would pick later. Although his words were polite and tactful, Lin Ji felt like she had been slapped in the face. She was a little unconvinced, but she pretended to be calm and asked, "Could it be that there's a bigger fashion superstar?" That person nodded and said politely, "We have to pick out the gown for the brand ambassador of the new season. Sorry for being rude." Lin Ji was embarrassed, but when she heard that the brand ambassador had the first pick, she didn't dare to object. After all, the identity of a brand ambassador was indeed more valuable than hers. However, When Lin Ji saw the person in charge lead the person holding the gown into Yun Shirshir's VIP room, she was so shocked that her eyes almost popped out. She was shocked and immediately rushed up. With an ugly expression, she asked, "Did you enter the wrong room?" "No. This VIP room is used by Yun Shirshir. In China, she's just a newbie." You're not joking, are you?" The embarrassment and disbelief on Lin Ji's face were evident. She thought that the person in charge had made a mistake. Unexpectedly, the other party replied, "I didn't make a mistake. Louis Vuitton's brand ambassador for the new season in Greater China is Ms. Yun Shirshir." When Lin Ji heard this, her vision went dark and she almost lost her balance. The corners of her mouth twitched, and she smiled awkwardly. "Are you sure? Yun Shirshir? She's the brand ambassador for the new season. Until now, there had only been one brand ambassador for Louis Vuitton in Greater China, and that was Gu Xingze." Chapter 1448. Even if she was the spokesperson for Louis Vuitton, it was just a product line under Louis Vuitton. This had already made many female celebrities grit their teeth in jealousy. To put it bluntly, she had to resort to underhanded means to snatch the resources from the other party's hands in order to take this endorsement deal. Lin Ji bit her lip hard, her eyes red with jealousy. Why? She couldn't figure it out. Lin Ji glared at the gowns, her face full of indignation. Qin Zhou opened the door and saw the person in charge. He shook his hand politely and exchanged a few pleasantries. He glanced at Lin Ji from the corner of his eye and smiled. "Hey, why are you standing at the door? Why? Do you want to try on the gowns first? But let our Yun Shirshir try them on first. We'll send them to you after she's done choosing." Lin Ji stomped her foot angrily. Humph. She turned around and went back to the VIP room. Qin Zhou rolled his eyes seductively and closed the door after welcoming the gowns in. Yun Shirshir flipped through the gowns. There were a total of 10 gowns sent to her. These were the best of the best, so she had to pick first. Qin Zhou let her pick 5 gowns first. 5? So many? Please, don't tell me you want to walk through the entire fashion week with just one gown? Qin Zhou glanced at her with disdain. Yun Shirshir shook her head. Suddenly, she picked up a haute couture gown and compared it to her body. Fortunately, she was tall. Otherwise, with these European and American brands, which were designed according to the model's height of 1.78 meters, it would be difficult to acclimatize to an Asian with a smaller frame. Lin Ji, who was only 1.58 meters tall, would probably cover her face and cry when it was her turn to pick out the gown. She couldn't even bring out the aura of these gowns. She didn't even know how high her stilettos would have to be to bring out her aura. Qin Zhou also went forward to pick out the gowns for her. However, no matter how he picked, he wasn't satisfied. This one doesn't have an aura. This one's color scheme is too old-fashioned. This one is too gaudy. The experienced Qin Zhou passed on a few gowns. In the end, he picked out 2 that were barely acceptable. Yun Shirshir was in tears. "Boss Qin, you're really picky." Qin Zhou raised his eyebrows, glanced at her, and said coldly, "I'm not the one who picked it. Some of the gowns are too petite and can't bring out the aura." An arrow through the heart. Yun Shirshir was deeply hurt and wiped her tears. But it wasn't her fault. European and American models had broad shoulders, and their frames were not small. Although she was tall, she looked delicate and boneless. These gowns were not custom-made, so they did not bring out her aura. "Try this one again." Qin Zhou carefully selected another one and threw it to her. Yun Shirshir gave it a try. Qin Zhou circled around her, crossed his arms, and looked her up and down. Then he reluctantly said, "Not bad." "Barely okay? Your frame is really small." Qin narrowed his eyes. But there's nothing I can do about it. I was born with it. Just as he finished speaking, someone knocked on the door. Qin thought it was Lin Ji looking for trouble again. He walked over with an unfriendly expression. When he opened the door, he saw a fashionably dressed woman speaking in authentic Italian. "Hello. A gentleman has specially customized a gown for Miss Yun Shirshir. Is it convenient for you to send it in now? Who is it? Mr. Mu." Chapter 1449. "Are you sure this gown was sent here?" "Yes, sir. I can't be wrong. Come in." The man brought the gown in. It was a high-class gown with a Cheongsam design. The gown was embellished with blue and white porcelain, which complemented her temperament and figure. However, compared to other gowns, this gown was very conservative. Other than the shoulders, every part of the gown was covered. Qin lifted the gown and looked at it. He broke out in a cold sweat. This gown was beautiful, but there was nothing special about it. It was suitable for a fashion show, but it was too plain to walk the red carpet. It should at least show off some of her long legs. It was said that it was tailor-made according to Yun Shirshir's figure. "Mr. Mu?" Yun Shirshir touched the gown. She suddenly thought of who this Mr. Mu was. Qin helped Yun Shirshir into the gown. However, when she was trying it on, there was a knock on the door again. "Who is it?" Qin walked over and opened the door. He saw two people standing outside with gowns. Carefully, they were looking at each other. Qin was stunned. He looked at them again, and the corners of his lips twitched. "Hello, we are here to deliver a custom-made gown for Miss Yun Shirshir." "Hello, we are here to deliver a custom-made gown for Miss Yun Shirshir." The two of them said almost at the same time. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them were shocked. They looked at each other again and judged each other. Qin asked hesitantly, "Who sent the gown?" "Mr. Gu." "Mr. Yun." The two of them spoke at the same time again. Then they looked at each other again, as if they were competing secretly. Qin sighed and held his forehead. He waved his hand and stepped aside. "Send it in." The two of them squeezed through the doorway and fought to send the gown in. Hence, when Yun Shirshir stepped out of the dressing room after trying on her gown, she saw 3 more sets of gowns being sent into the spacious VIP room. The corners of her eyes twitched violently. One of them was a gift from Mr. Yun. It was a luxurious European-style haute couture. It was Louis Vuitton's new autumn collection. It was tailor-made, and the price was not cheap. The other 2 sets were gifts from Mr. Gu. Qin glanced at the style and immediately recognized that these 2 gowns were Gu Xing's aesthetic. He took another look at the design and was immediately speechless. These 2 sets of clothes were also custom-made and were not cheap. Just one of the rose-colored clothes was as high as 8 figures. How extravagant! Qin was speechless. Gu Xingze really put a lot of thought into Yun Shirshir. These 2 outfits were the works of a master. Although they weren't Louis Vuitton's new models, both sets were out of print. Only Gu Xingze, who had been friends with Louis Vuitton for many years, could have gotten it. Qin took a look at it. Because it was tailor-made, he guessed that Yun Shirshir would definitely look good in it. However, in comparison, the cheap-how that Mr. Mu had sent over paled in comparison. Too conservative. It was not revealing at all. However, when walking the red carpet, it was important to be eye-catching. Therefore, Qin quickly asked Yun Shirshir to hurry up and change into it. Yun Shirshir had just changed into 2 outfits when there was a knock on the door again. Qin was stunned again and looked at the door. Who had sent the gown this time? Qin walked to the door. As soon as he opened it, he heard whispers outside. Chapter 1450. "Oh my God! This gown is so beautiful! I heard this is Mark's. It's Jacob's work. It's so beautiful. I love this design element. It's Mark's out-of-print work. Chinjo opened the door and saw a man dressed like a gentleman standing at the door with a high-end fashion gown in his hands. Meanwhile, the stylists in the studio surrounded the gown one after another, their eyes filled with amazement and envy. Compared to this gown, the 10 gowns sent by the brand for this show were nothing. This gown was the real deal. It was breathtaking. Hello, is it convenient for you to send the gown in now? Who sent this? Again, the man was also confused. Chinjo said seriously, what I mean is, who sent this gown? Hello, sir. This is the gown sent by Mr. Gong. It's an out-of-print Louis Vuitton gown. Chinjo was speechless. Who was Mr. Gong? When the gown was sent in, Yun sure happened to walk out after trying on the gown. When she saw that someone had sent in another piece of fashion, her legs went weak. Who sent this gown? Yun sure looked around. However, with just one glance, she was deeply stunned by this high-end gown. It was so beautiful. It was really beautiful. She was deeply amazed. This gown was simply breathtaking. This gown was different from the previous ones. It was a floor-length gown. However, the gown had a fluffy design, which accentuated her exquisite waistline. The most eye-catching part of this gown was the ink and wash elements throughout. The gradual ink color, from the design of the snow-white shoulders to the fluffy skirt, looked as if it had jumped out of an ink and wash painting from afar. It was like an immortal that had been banished from the mortal world. It was simply beautiful. It was otherworldly. It was truly otherworldly. Among all the gowns sent in from the VIP room, this was probably the only one that suited her the most. Even a picky person like Chinjo was deeply amazed by her beauty. Who was Mr. Gong? His taste was simply indescribable. This gown was perfect for walking the red carpet. There would be a China-style show at this year's Fashion Week, and this gown would fit the theme perfectly. It would definitely attract everyone's attention. Putting everything else aside, this gown alone was enough to guarantee that it would make the headlines. It was not because of anything else, but because this dress was a priceless and magnificent treasure. It was said that this gown was Mark's out-of-print design and was worth 9 figures. What an extravagant move. Chinjo could not help but sigh. Who exactly is this Mr. Gong? Mr. Gong? Yun sure was a little surprised. Was this gown sent by Mr. Gong? Yes. Chinjo nodded and glanced at her. Is this Mr. Gong your friend? Yun sure was stunned for a while. Then, her gaze fell on the dress, and she smiled knowingly. She seemed to have guessed who this Mr. Gong was. Little Jia must have sent it over. But how did he know that she was at Fashion Week, and that he would deliver a dress at such an opportune time? Sure, try this gown on. You should look beautiful in it. Chinjo urged her. Yun sure nodded and carried the gown into the fitting room. About 10 minutes later, Yun sure changed into the gown with the help of her assistant. She lifted the hem of the dress and walked out of the fitting room. Chapter 1451. Yun sure was dressed in a gorgeous gown. It had a snow-white background with a gradual ink and wash pattern that extended from her waist all the way to the hem of the gown. Coupled with her silky black hair that reached her waist, her gorgeous makeup, and the rich Chinese style, she looked dazzling. She was too beautiful, so beautiful, that no one could find a single flaw in it. Even Chinjo, who had an exceptionally sharp gaze, couldn't find any flaws in it. It was as if this gown was made for her. At that moment, Chinjo couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Who exactly was Mr. Gong, who had chosen this gown? He had such great taste. When this gown was worn by Yun sure, it instantly captured everyone's attention. Walking on the red carpet would definitely be a sight to behold. This gown was extremely compatible with Yun sure. Other people probably wouldn't be able to bring out the aura of this gown. As for the other gowns, it would probably be very difficult to bring out Yun Shirshir's fairy-like beauty and elegance. A rare satisfied smile appeared on Chinzhou's face. He praised, "Shirshir, you look so beautiful in this gown." Yun Shirshir blushed charmingly. "Boss Qin, it's rare for you to praise me like this." "That's because it's really beautiful. I can't find a single flaw in it." Yun Shirshir was a little surprised. Even Chinzhou was praising her so openly. She must be really beautiful. She walked in front of the mirror. However, when the mirror reflected her fairy-like gown, Yun Shirshir was stunned. "Oh my God, it was really beautiful." "Shirshir, you'll wear this gown on the red carpet tonight," Chinzhou instructed. Yun Shirshir nodded. Then she glanced at the other gowns and asked tentatively, "Then what about the other gowns that were sent here?" "As for the rest, we'll leave them for the show. I feel that the effects of the other gowns are about the same. They're not as stunning as this one. You can pick 4 gowns." Chinzhou left the choice in her hands. Yun Shirshir picked 4 pieces. While she was choosing, her cell phone suddenly rang. Yun Shirshir hurriedly picked up the phone. Gong Jie's mysterious and magnetic voice came from the other end. "Baby, do you like the gift I sent you?" When Yun Shirshir heard his voice, she squinted her eyes and smiled. "Xiao Jie, it's you." Gong Jie snorted coldly and pretended to be angry. "Now you recognize my voice? I'm so touched." "Hey, don't make fun of me," Yun Shirshir complained. Then her eyes curved slightly. "I've received your gift. I like it very much. Thank you." "For what?" Gong Jie was a little displeased. He didn't like her saying thank you to him. It seemed very distant. "In the future, you're not allowed to say thank you or sorry to me. These 2 words, understand?" "All right." Yun Shirshir naturally listened to him. "Xiao Jie, this gown is really beautiful. Your taste is really unique." "Of course. I'm very picky when it comes to beauty." Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios in the luxurious presidential suite of the Manhattan Hotel. Gong Jie stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in a bathrobe, looking at the dark city in the distance. He held the phone in his hand, but his tone was tender and affectionate. "A beautiful dress can only show its value when worn by you." Yun Shirshir blushed. His words were full of love. Even Gong Jie couldn't feel how much he loved Yun Shirshir. He wanted to spoil her to the bone. Chapter 1452. As soon as he found out about Yun Shirshir's announcement, he began to look for a gown to wear on the red carpet. After looking around, he finally picked this one. He had spent a high price to buy this gown. At first, the financier was unwilling. This gown was a priceless treasure. Someone had once offered a 9-figure sum for it, but they did not get what they wanted. However, who was Gong Jie? He refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. He held a gun to the financier's head and half bought and half snatched the gown. In his eyes, only this gown was worthy of his sister. Other than his sister, no one else was worthy. His usual domineering style was undoubtedly reflected. "As long as sister likes it." Gong Jie paused for a moment and said, "It's just right for you to wear on the red carpet." He wanted his sister to appear beautiful in front of the camera. Yun Shirshir could not help but laugh. "Won't this be too high profile?" "What are you afraid of? Sister is so beautiful. Is there anything wrong with being high profile?" Gong Jie retorted confidently. Yun Shirshir was instantly speechless and could only smile. "Xiao Jie, I'm going to do my styling. I'll text you when I'm back." "Okay." Yun Shirshir hung up the phone and was pushed by Chinzhou to do the last step of her styling. After changing into the gown, she had to adjust her hairstyle. Chinzhou instructed the stylist to give her a classic and gorgeous hairstyle. coupled with the ink gown. She was simply too beautiful. Thus, when she walked out of the VIP room, she coincidentally bumped into Linji, who had also changed into her gown. When Linji saw Yun Shirshir in her gorgeous gown, she was stunned. In an instant, she felt that the European-style gown on her paled in comparison. She had spent a lot of effort. In the end, when she walked out and saw Yun Shirshir's gorgeous aura, she suddenly felt that her gown was too plain, no matter how she looked at it. She was completely outclassed. They hadn't even stepped on the red carpet, but the difference between them was obvious. Linji thought that Yun Shirshir's gown was a gift from the brand, and felt that Yun Shirshir had stolen her limelight. Thus, she said unhappily, "This gown should have been mine." She was being unreasonable, but Yun Shirshir couldn't be bothered with her, and didn't even look at her. Lin Ji felt even more indignant. She said angrily, "I should have picked the gown first. Yun Shirshir, take it off and let me wear it." Qinzhou couldn't take it anymore. "Linji, are you crazy? Did he take medicine when he went out? Don't be unreasonable here." Unreasonable? Lin Ji's face flushed red from Qinzhou's scolding. "Qinzhou, don't think you can bully others just because you have some background and tricks up your sleeve," she argued. "You're clearly bullying me, aren't you? Why should Yun Shirshir have the first pick of the gowns sent by the brand? Isn't it just to make fun of me? Make fun of you?" When Qinzhou heard that, he sneered. "Linji, how shameless are you that I have to put in the effort to make fun of you? Don't think too highly of yourself. You're making a fool of yourself. I don't care." Linji felt extremely indignant and started to throw a tantrum. "Anyway, this gown belongs to me. Give it back to me. Get lost." Qinzhou had completely lost his patience. He waved his hand as if he was shooing away an annoying fly. He was so annoyed by this Linji. Chapter 1453. Linji stared at him in a daze. Her eyes reddened when she heard Qinzhou tell her to get lost so rudely. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she choked out, "You guys are too much. You guys are too much." Qinzhou imitated Lin Ji's coquettish and pretentious face to the point that it was carved into the wood. The people in the studio couldn't help but laugh. Lin Ji's face grew paler and paler as she glared at him with bloodshot eyes. If looks could kill, Qinzhou would have died 10,000 times over. Yun Shirshir's face turned cold. How could Lin Ji be so shameless? She rarely used the word shameless to describe a girl. However, Lin Ji was worthy of the word. Female celebrities in the entertainment industry were all like that. If they had a chance to climb up the ranks, they would use all means and resources to their advantage. "Oh, don't show such a disgusting face. Don't you feel disgusted? This gown doesn't belong to you. Even if it did, such a noble gown would look like a cheap gown on you. Why don't you take a look at your own body? Your legs are so short. Can they hold up the aura of this gown?" Qinzhou mocked her mercilessly. Lin Ji's face was completely peeled off, leaving nothing behind. Lin Ji's lips trembled, but she couldn't refute him. Yun Shirshir was too dazzling at this moment. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she had to admit that this gown suited Yun Shirshir very well. It was too beautiful. She couldn't refute him at all. People were like this. Once they faced someone who was more dazzling and outstanding than them, they would feel ashamed of their inferiority. At the same time, they wouldn't have the confidence to argue. He could only watch helplessly as Qinzhou led Yun Shirshir into a luxurious Bentley and sped off. Lin Ji watched them leave with a vicious gaze. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. In the car, Qinzhou edited the photo that Yun Shirshir had taken in the VIP room and uploaded it to Weibo. There was a professional retoucher in the team. With a little bit of effort, he adjusted the color of the image and uploaded it. With Yun Shirshir's unique condition, She didn't need to spend too much effort in the post-production process. She just needed to adjust the color a little, and it was done. As soon as the photo was uploaded, the media, who had been on standby, immediately began to publicize it. Beauty reaches new heights. Beautiful beyond the heavens. Photo killer. The draft was inseparable from these praises, changing the soup but not the medicine. Weibo instantly blew up as well. Yun Shirshir had been in the limelight recently, coupled with her participation in the Milan Fashion Week. She was in the limelight. The first thing Qin Zhou did was to upload the beautiful photos taken by the studio and seize the initiative. Thus, the prelude to the Fashion Week began. Manhattan Hotel, presidential suite. Gong Jie sat on the sofa, browsing Weibo. He did not have a Weibo account before, but when he learned that Yun Shirshir had opened a verified account, he secretly registered an account and only followed Yun Shirshir and Yun Shirshir's studio accounts. Yun Shirshir's studio account was carefully managed by Qin Zhou. Therefore, he saw the photo that Yun Shirshir's studio had released immediately. Chapter 1454. She lifted her chin, slightly. Her meticulously styled hair made her face look as fair as jade. From the moment he saw this gown, he was certain that his sister would be stunningly beautiful in it. Hence, he took a photo of it without hesitation. However, it turned out that this gown was indeed quite suitable. Gong Jie could not help but smile when he saw this photo. "This is so beautiful." He sighed softly, not bothering to hide the amazement in his eyes. Yun Shirshir, walking the red carpet in the gown he had sent her, made him feel extremely satisfied. On the other hand, a certain man at the airport was holding his phone. When he clicked on a Weibo post and saw Yun Shirshir posing in the ink-style gown in the photo, his eyes darkened. Muyaja could not help but furrow his brows deeply. This gown was too revealing. Although the skirt was long and covered a pair of beautiful legs, due to the strapless design, almost all the scenery below her shoulders and above her breasts were exposed. He did not like her dressing so conspicuously. All the beauty on her body should be enjoyed by him alone. Hence, when he learned that she was going to the fashion show, he immediately sent someone to send a gown to her at the thought of those female celebrities wearing revealing outfits in the past fashion shows. Only a pair of fragrant shoulders were exposed, and the rest was covered tightly. He thought that she would wear it on the red carpet when she learned that he was the one who had sent it. However, the photo she uploaded was of this gown. This made him especially unhappy. It was too revealing. He did not like it. He especially did not like her dressing like this. When Minyu rushed over with the plane ticket, he saw Muyaja in a terrible mood. His hand was gripping his phone so tightly that it turned white, and the veins on the back of his hand were bulging. "Oh, boss seems to be very angry." Minyu stole a glance from the corner of his eye and saw Yun Shirshir's stunning photo on the phone screen. His eyes were filled with amazement. Muyaja sensed his gaze and looked up abruptly to give him a warning glare. Feeling awkward, Minyu immediately pretended not to see it. He whistled and looked around. "Have you sent that gown over?" "Yes, I've sent it over." Minyu immediately replied. "I immediately called the higher-ups of Louis Vuitton after you gave me your instructions. I specially selected a relatively conservative gown." "Is it the cheongsam you showed me?" "That's right." "How? Isn't Madame wearing it?" As soon as Minyu finished speaking, he saw Muyaja's face darken, so he immediately shut his mouth. "All right, Madame must not be wearing it. That's why the boss is so angry." "Boss, Madame looks great in this gown," Minyu exclaimed in admiration. However, it didn't matter if he didn't say this, but once he did, a certain old cadre's face became even gloomier. Minyu's bootlicking was definitely from the wrong angle. Looking at Muyaja's darkening face, Minyu decided to keep his mouth shut. The more he spoke, the more wrong he felt. Muyaja turned off his phone and boarded the plane. It was about a 10-hour journey. This stupid woman. I must settle the score with her. Yu sat in front of the computer and scrolled through Weibo. She saw the photo uploaded by Yun Shishir's studio. Her first reaction was that it was exceptionally stunning. Chapter 1455. His mommy looked stunning in this gown. She looked like a real fairy and was indescribably beautiful. His second reaction, however, was disappointment. He had clearly sent a gown to his mommy. Why didn't she wear it? He had spent so much time choosing the dress so that his mommy could wear it to the fashion show. However, in the photo that was posted on Weibo, she was wearing a different dress. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed and frustrated. Xiao Yichen stood at the side and looked at Yun Shishir's elegant and luxurious posture in the photo. He instantly turned into a fanboy. Mommy is so beautiful. It took him a long time to resist the urge to pounce on the screen and lick it. You glanced at him coldly. Mu Yichen, you're really promising. Xiao Yichen defended himself, feeling wronged. Why? Mommy is so beautiful. Don't you think so? Yu was stunned. His gaze fell on the photo again. As he looked at his mommy in the photo, his eyes could not help but become infatuated. Beautiful, he couldn't help but sigh. Although his mommy did not wear the gown he had sent and was rather disappointed, she did look beautiful in it. The little lad instantly felt satisfied. Just as he was still staring at the beautiful photo in a daze and could not take his eyes off it, his phone rang. When he picked up the call, he could hear Gong Jie's slightly smug tone. Gong Jie, little nephew, have you seen the beautiful photo your mommy uploaded on Weibo? Yu. He was stunned for a moment and then narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Are you following mommy's Weibo, too? Aha! Gong Jie admitted it. Frankly, his Weibo account was created for Yun Shishir, and he only followed the accounts of Yun Shishir and her studio. He only followed Yun Shishir's updates. Hearing his smug tone, Yun Tianyu wondered who he was. Being meticulous and intelligent, he immediately smelled something fishy. Did you give mommy this gown? Aha! Gong Jie's tone became even more smug as he asked smugly, the gown your mommy is wearing is carefully selected by me. Is she beautiful? It was actually him. In an instant, Yu felt indignant. It was not perfect. He thought that Yun Shishir's gown was arranged by the brand, but he did not expect it to be a gift from Gong Jie. He was obviously here to show off his prowess. Ah, I can't accept this. Uncle, are you showing off your aesthetic sense to me? Yu snorted. Gong Jie smiled as well. Her smile made the boy feel even more uncomfortable. It was sour. Yu unceremoniously hung up the call. He crossed his arms and leaned against the computer chair angrily as he stared at Yun Shishir's beautiful photo. His little face looked like a pink bun. Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, was still sprawled in front of the computer as he stared at Yun Shishir's beautiful photo in infatuation. Holding his little face, his eyes turned into crescents. Mommy is so beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Yu was flustered. Shut up. With that, he closed Weibo, stood up, walked to the bookshelf, grabbed a reference book, and sat on the sofa to read it. Xiao Yichen muttered under his breath. What's wrong? Why are you angry again for no reason? Be quiet. Yu could not help rebuking him and continued reading. Chapter 1456. By the time Qin Zhou and Yun Shishir arrived at the venue, there were already quite a number of female celebrities present, even though it was considered early. However, these female celebrities weren't big shots. After all, big shots were all about being the last to appear. The later they appeared, the more prominent their status would be. These female celebrities all relied on media invitations to get into Fashion Week. They were all there to ride on the popularity of Fashion Week. At Fashion Week, the stars were shining and the lights were flashing. Various female celebrities were competing with each other among the media. They were constantly styling and accepting the baptism of the media's spotlight. Getting into Fashion Week was like getting a diploma from the fashion university. Their agents also got a ticket to negotiate overseas brand endorsements. It was much easier than working hard to appear in a literary film that no one cared about and squeezing onto the red carpet of an international film festival. However, how to improve one's fashion skills in just 7 days depended on each person's attainments. A show lasted at most 10 minutes. Before the show started, the celebrities had to socialize with various celebrities. Since it was Fashion Week, watching the show was of utmost importance. Just like domestic press conferences, there was an unwritten rule that all shows would start half an hour later than the scheduled time. According to a luxury brand's PR, this 30 minutes was specially reserved for the guests to socialize. For example, some celebrities would use this time to get close to the brand's executives and greet the good sisters that they met by chance. In order to watch the show, the celebrities spent a lot of energy on dressing and styling. In addition to carefully choosing clothes and matching styles, just combing their hair and makeup would take a few hours. The actual time they had to watch the show was only enough to listen to a few songs. Usually, a brand press conference would last about 5 minutes. There would be more than 30 sets of the latest clothes on display. Some big shows would have more clothes. The models would go on stage one after another, and it would be over in 10 minutes at most. When the show was over, many celebrities would immediately get up and leave in a hurry because they had to rush to the next show. Some celebrities were also in a hurry to greet the media at the door. Qin arrived early with Yun Shirshir to introduce her to the top executives of various fashion brands, producers, and directors. After all, she was a newcomer. Although Qin had invested a lot of resources in her, she still had many shortcomings. In just 10 minutes, Yun Shirshir was introduced to the 3 Hollywood investors by Qin. A grand introduction was made in front of them. The investors were very satisfied with Yun Shirshir's temperament and qualifications. Yun Shirshir's face was a classic beauty. In Hollywood, she was very popular. Qin social skills were absolutely top-notch. He negotiated a job for Yun Shirshir on the spot. Recently, Hollywood was preparing to shoot a commercial blockbuster with the theme of American heroism. In recent years, the backbone of Hollywood had been increasingly migrating to the mainland market. In terms of casting, they paid more attention to adding Asian faces. With the connections he had accumulated in Hollywood, he managed to secure a role for her on the spot. Although she was just a supporting role with a small screen, being able to show her face in Hollywood and further her studies was also the best way to raise her status. Chapter 1457. 10 minutes before the show started, Lin Ji and a group of female celebrities arrived. It wasn't that they were putting on airs. As a rising star in the entertainment industry, Lin Ji couldn't wait to get to the show as soon as possible. She wanted to grab more attention and interact with more celebrities. However, Lin Ji and the other female celebrities were delayed at the entrance for a long time because of a problem with their passes. By the time she rushed to the show, Yun Shirshir had already finished taking photos with various celebrities and was seated at the show. Unfortunately, just as Lin Ji was about to rush to the scene to attract more attention from the media, Han Yuyen arrived. Han Yuyen was already a senior figure in the fashion industry. She had worked with many famous brands and celebrities. She could be considered a veteran in the industry. With her around, Lin Ji couldn't steal the limelight at all. She didn't dare to. With Han Yuyen's status, even if she wanted to, she didn't have the guts. Therefore, she could only watch as the media rushed to Han Yuyen with their cameras raised. Han Yuyen stood on the red carpet in a custom-made Chanel gown. At this moment, she was the absolute star of the show. Many domestic and foreign media surrounded her like stars surrounding the moon. Her every move was the focus of everyone's attention. In contrast, Linji looked calm and at ease. At this moment, in front of her, there were many people at the entrance. As a rising star in the fashion industry, no one paid attention to her. Moreover, her gown was left behind by Yun Shirshir. Her starlight was dim and no one cared. Lin Ji hated Yun Shirshir to the core. She wanted to cut this stumbling block into pieces. If she hadn't stepped in, she would have been the one to wear that gown. Then, in today's show, with that gown, she should have been the center of attention. But now, Lin Ji looked at the scene where no one cared about her. She felt so wronged that she wanted to cry. Her assistant suddenly saw a push notification on Weibo. She clicked on it and saw a photo of Yun Shirshir and the Empress Dowager. She showed the phone to Lin Ji. Lin Ji took a look, and her eyes turned red with anger. Empress Dowager was just a nickname. The Empress Dowager's real name was Karl Lagerfeld. He was the artistic director of Chanel and was regarded as the mascot of Fashion Week. There was a famous saying in the fashion industry: he was not a real man until he reached the Great Wall. It would be a pity if he could not take a photo with the Empress Dowager. No matter how famous a celebrity was, they would try their best to ask the brand's PR to arrange a photo with the Empress Dowager. Yun Shirshir's photo with the Empress Dowager had stolen the limelight. Qin Zhou had a close relationship with Chanel's PR department. Therefore, he arranged for Yun Shirshir to meet Karl. However, to Qin Zhou's surprise, Yun Shirshir's English was unexpectedly proficient, and she was able to talk fluently with various celebrities. This was something that Lin Ji couldn't compare to. Lin Ji's English was close to zero. Lin Ji wasn't the only one. Many domestic celebrities' English wasn't up to standard. Many celebrities would rather miss the opportunity to interact with the big shots than embarrass themselves at the Fashion Week. Fashion Week was an important arena of Fashion Week. Other than watching the shows, taking photos, and taking street photos, there was also the brand dinner. At this time, Yun Shirshir, the top student and campus belle, learned English in her 4 years of university hard work. Chapter 1458. Lin Ji's face darkened. The thought of Yun Shirshir stealing the limelight at the Fashion Week made her so angry that she wanted to smash her phone. The show was about to start. Lin Ji had no choice but to look around and find a large chibi doll of the Empress Dowager. She reluctantly took a photo with it to prove her presence at the Fashion Week. Yun Shirshir and Qin Zhou arrived at the venue and prepared to sit down under the arrangement of the brand's public relations team. Lin Ji's seat was in the front row of the show's VIP section. However, when Yun Shirshir walked to her seat, she found a problem. Her seat was taken by someone else. It was a very familiar face. Li Mingqi, an international supermodel and the previous spokesperson of Louis Vuitton. Yun Shirshir was stunned. She thought she had gone to the wrong seat, but after looking around, she was sure that her seat was taken. The VIP section of the show was a symbol of status. Now, all the major brands knew that the mainland was the future of all luxury goods. Pleasing the female stars from China was an important part of their public relations activities. It was definitely a glorious thing to be able to sit in the front row of the show. Many female stars wanted to steal the limelight, but not everyone could. Sitting in the front row and sitting next to each other became a bargaining chip for all the female celebrities to compete with. For example, being able to sit with a Hollywood superstar was definitely a symbol of infinite dignity. The seat next to Anna, the editor-in-chief of the American version of Vogue, also attracted attention. However, some people couldn't get the seat, so they came up with despicable tricks. For example, they rushed to the show early, tore off the paper with the stars' names on it, and sat down themselves. When the Real celebrities entered the venue, they found that there was another person in their seat. When the lights dimmed and the show was about to start, they couldn't say anything and could only squeeze in. Li Mingqi must have arrived early. When she saw the name Yun Shirshir on the front row, she felt strange. She tore it off without hesitation and sat down with a clear conscience. Yun Shirshir said politely, "Hello, this is my seat." However, Li Mingqi didn't seem to hear what she said. Her eyes were still looking straight ahead, treating her like air. Yun Shirshir reminded her again, "Miss, you're sitting in my seat. Could you please move aside?" She raised her voice slightly. Seeing that Li Mingqi was still ignoring her, Yun Shirshir spoke again in English. He raised his voice slightly, attracting the attention of the surrounding people, who all looked over. Only then did Li Mingqi raise her head, but she asked in a neutral tone, "This is your seat, but I don't see your name written on it." The mockery in his words was obvious. Yun Shirshir was speechless. Obviously, Li Mingqi didn't know her. She was an international supermodel and had been developing her career on the runway overseas all year round. This time, because of her schedule, she didn't manage to get an invitation letter. Therefore, she rushed to the show early and occupied a seat. She saw that the name Yun Shirshir next to Han Yuyan was a little unfamiliar, so she tore it off without thinking. Chapter 1459. Milan Fashion Week was a strict fashion show. The brand's PR team would check the seats before the show started and invite the celebrities to their own seats. Li Mingqi panicked when she heard that. She thought that this newcomer would be easy to bully, but she didn't expect that this person's attitude would be so strong. He didn't back down at all and didn't intend to give her any face. Her exquisitely made-up face immediately darkened. She felt uneasy when Yun Shirshir said that she was going to ask the brand's PR team to check the seats. This was Milan Fashion Week, a place where big shots and celebrities gathered. You win. Li Mingqi wasn't stupid enough to embarrass herself in such an occasion. She glared at Yun Shirshir with her sharp eyes, but pretended to be reserved. She stood up and walked away without saying a word. Yun Shirshir rolled her eyes in her heart. There were so many shameless people. Another one popped up after she beat one. How could there be so many shameless people? There was Lin Ji, and now there was Li Mingqi. She didn't know how many disgusting faces she would have to face in the next few days. Yun Shirshir sat down. Before the show started, the big shots entered the venue. Han Yuyan and Gu Xingze arrived one after the other. As Louis Vuitton's brand partner, Han Yuyan was dressed luxuriously and looked domineering. Gu Xingze was Louis Vuitton's only brand ambassador in Greater China. His seat was arranged to be on the right of Yun Shirshir. When Gu Xingze arrived, he saw Yun Shirshir in her gown. His expectant eyes turned cold as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. He sat down beside her and sized her up silently. Yun Shirshir smiled and nodded at him. Gu Xingze couldn't help but ask softly, "Shirshir, don't you like the gown I gave you?" Yun Shirshir was slightly stunned. She said apologetically, "Qin Zhou liked this gown and wanted me to walk the red carpet. I'll wear the dress you gave me at the banquet." The more he spoke, the dimmer Gu Xingze's eyes became. He shook his head and whispered, "It's fine. There's no need to explain. You do look beautiful in this dress." However, even though he said that, the loneliness on his face could not be concealed. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but feel a little guilty. She whispered, "I'm sorry. I've let you down. It's okay, you don't have to apologize." Gu Xingze smiled. Seeing that her hair was a little messy, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. This intimate act attracted the attention of many spotlights. When Han Yuyin arrived, she was also deeply shocked by Yun Shishir's classical and gorgeous gown. So beautiful, she was so beautiful that people couldn't help but feel ashamed of their inferiority. Even though she was dressed very elegantly today, compared to Yun Shishir, she paled in comparison. Seeing this, in order to avoid being compared with Yun Shishir, she switched places with her friend. This was where she couldn't compare to Han Yuyin. In this aspect, Han Yuyin knew when to advance and when to retreat. She wasn't stupid enough to be in the same frame with someone who would steal her limelight. That was a big taboo. She wouldn't give Yun Shishir the chance to do so. Chapter 1460. The show was short. It ended in about 10 minutes. After the show, with Qinzhou's warning, she struggled to maintain her elegant look. She felt physically and mentally exhausted. After the show ended, Yun Shishir was dragged by Qinzhou to take the top photographer from the country to the street shoot. As an artist directly invited by the brand's public relations department would arrange for 1 or 2 magazines to shoot the cover of the new fashion show this year. The artists invited by the media would also be responsible for a series of street shoots. For a star like Lin Ji, even if she didn't have such planned work to do, the reporters from all over the world who had been waiting at the entrance of the show could help increase her exposure. At the end of the day, Yun Shishir was so tired that she was about to collapse. She rarely wore high heels. Hence, when she went back to her room and took off her high heels, her heels were already red and swollen with blisters. She gently rubbed her heels and grimaced in pain. What a sin in the past when she saw celebrities rushing to the front page of the Fashion Week. It seemed glamorous, but she didn't know that there was so much blood and tears behind it. It wasn't easy for everyone. Yun Shishir sighed in her heart. Qinzhou stood at the door and gave her a concise summary of tomorrow's draft. He told her to rest early and left. Lastly, he didn't forget to warn her that she could only have a piece of bread for dinner. Yun Shishir felt miserable. She dragged the heavy gift and hung it in the closet. Then she plunged into the bathroom and soaked in the bathtub. The moment her body was immersed in the warm water, she sighed contentedly and fell limp. It's so comfortable. After a hard day's work, taking a bath was one of life's greatest pleasures. She dripped a few drops of rose essential oil and then started to soak in the bath comfortably. As she soaked, she was so tired that she fell asleep in the bathtub. Yun Shishir was awakened by the rapid and irritating sound of the doorbell. She woke up abruptly and opened her eyes. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The doorbell was still ringing. Over and over again, she didn't get tired of it. Who is it? Qinzhou? Yun Shishir furrowed her brows. She had some doubts in her heart. She got out of the bathtub, washed off the foam on her body, put on a bathrobe, and walked into the living room. The doorbell was still ringing. However, gradually, the person outside the door seemed to have lost his patience and became increasingly anxious and hurried. Yun Shishir was so nervous that she tightened her clothes. Who could it be? It couldn't be Qinzhou. After she came to her senses, she suddenly recalled Qinzhou's warning. If you're alone in a hotel, no matter who rings the doorbell, don't open the door. If I need you for anything, I'll call you first. My assistant is right next to you. If you need anything, just call her number. You have to remember that this is not within the country, but overseas. Public security overseas was not as good as in China. Violent incidents often occurred in hotels. Also, as a public figure, you have to know how to protect yourself. Therefore, before doing anything, he had to first confirm his own safety. No matter who rings the doorbell, don't open the door, just in case. She immediately found her phone and wanted to call Qinzhou to confirm. His phone had run out of battery and shut down automatically. It would take 15 minutes to charge it. Yun Shershur sat in the living room and looked in the direction of the door. She didn't dare to move for a long time. Chapter 1461. She remembered Chinjo's instructions and did not dare to open the door for strangers. After a long time, there was no movement outside the door. Yun Shershur walked to the door and suddenly found a peephole on the door. She opened it and looked outside, only to see an empty corridor. Could it be a waiter? She shrugged and returned to the sofa. Her phone was already charged and turned on. She logged into WeChat, found Chinjo, and sent a few messages. Someone was ringing the doorbell, crazily just now. It was so scary. TT, could there be perverts in this hotel? Boss Chin, I'm so scared. I'm so scared that a bad uncle will come and kidnap me being overseas. The signal was a little slow. It took a long time for the message to be sent. Yun Shershur complained about the broken network in the hotel. After a while, Chinjo replied, "Did you open the door?" Yun Shershur replied, "No, didn't you tell me not to open the door, no matter who it was? I've always followed your instructions." Chinjo. Then he replied with an eye-rolling emoji. "Are you still ringing the doorbell?" Yun Shershur replied, "No, I just walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There was no one outside." After waiting for a few seconds, Chinjo replied, "Don't open the door. Protect yourself. If there's anything, I'll call you." Yun Shershur replied with a smile, "Okay." After a while, Chinjo suddenly sent another message. "Yun Shershur, you're walking the red carpet at the banquet tomorrow. Who are you going with?" Yun Shershur fell silent. "I'm going alone." Chinjo rolled his eyes again. "Are you crazy? You're actually saying that you're going alone at such an important event. You're a newcomer walking the red carpet. You can't hold up the atmosphere." Yun Shershur, did she have a choice? Other than walking the red carpet alone, who else could she pull? She was unfamiliar with this place. Chinjo replied, "You're walking with Xingxia at the banquet tomorrow." Yun Shershur was confused. Didn't Xingxia have a date? Chinjo heartlessly said, "Her female companion was kicked out by me at the last moment." Yun Shershur was confused again. "Boss Chin, you're so domineering." Chinjo said matter-of-factly, "Isn't that nonsense? Xingxia is an artist that I use to manage. With his resources, it's just a matter of words for me to get them. Make some preparations tomorrow. You must control your aura and suppress the crowd. There will be local media present at the scene. When the time comes, I will get them to give you the headlines." Yun Shershur, "Chinjo, what point? Wash up and go to bed early. I'll wake you up on time tomorrow morning." Yun Shershur raised her hands in surrender. Fine. I'm going to sleep." Chinjo, good night." Yun Shershur, good night." Yun Shershur put down her phone and walked to the bathroom. She picked up the hairdryer and began to dry her hair strand by strand. Her hair was very long and plentiful. If she tied it into a bundle, it would be a little difficult for her to hold it with one hand. Mushi often told her that she was envious of her beautiful black hair. She even kept saying that with long hair like hers, when she became famous in the future, she would not need any post-production to take on those shampoo and conditioner commercials. She would be as smooth and beautiful as her hair. Yun Shershur only smiled when she heard that. She had inherited Mu Qingqing's hair. When she was young, she still remembered that her mother also had a head of smooth black hair. After washing her hair, she would often sit by the bed and comb it over and over again. That scene was really beautiful. Chapter 1462. The noise from the hairdryer was very loud. She brushed her hair with one hand and held the hairdryer with the other. However, from the corner of her eye, she saw a shadow flash past the door from the mirror. Startled, she quickly turned around and looked in the direction where she had caught a glimpse of the shadow earlier. At this moment, There was no one. It was as if what she saw was just an illusion. However, could it be an illusion? Her vision was well protected. How could she have seen wrongly? She clearly saw a shadow flash past. Yun Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. She was still in shock. The door was closed properly. How could someone come in? The hotel's door required a card to be swiped to enter. Unless it was the hotel's management staff who had a backup card, no one could enter. Who's there? She yelled loudly. However, there was no response. Yun Shirshir clenched her fists nervously. She walked out of the bathroom and scanned the huge living room with a bewildered gaze. However, there was no suspicious trace at all. She was staying in the hotel's luxurious suite. Other than the bedroom, there was also a living room. However, there was no one here. Could it be that her eyes were really playing tricks on her? Yun Shirshir frowned tiredly. Perhaps she was too tired. These few days, her schedule was packed to the brim. There was not much space for her to rest. She was probably too tired, so her eyes were playing tricks on her. Thinking of this, she calmed down. She returned to the bathroom and dried her hair. She tied the knot on her bathrobe and walked to the bedroom. Just as she pushed the bedroom door open, a cold wind blew in through the window. She was stunned and couldn't help but frown. Why was the window open? She remembered that she had closed the window and drawn the curtains. Now, the window was wide open. Because the hotel was on a higher floor, the wind kept blowing in from the window, causing the curtains to flutter. Yun Shirshir looked puzzled for a moment. She walked over and closed the window and the curtains. In an instant, the room returned to a dead silence. She was acutely aware that she was not alone in the room. Her whole body froze, and her heart was beating like thunder. Yun Shirshir bit her lips tightly. Her frozen body was unable to move. Her awareness had always been sharper than others. Just now, the wind outside the window was whistling. However, after the window and door were closed, the huge bedroom suddenly became quiet. Hence, she could clearly sense that there was another unfamiliar presence in the room. This person's aura was terrifyingly aggressive, like a ferocious beast that had its eyes on its prey. She could even feel that the pair of eyes that were fixed on her back covetously, as if they wanted to burn through her back. Who? Yun Shirshir's eyes. She didn't even have time to turn to defend herself. Eyes. She saw a tall figure's close was approaching her. She could see his faces. Bams. A powerful body pressed down on her. He pressed her firmly against the cold, floor-to-ceiling window. Chapter 1463. Let go of me. Yun Shirshir started to struggle violently. The man behind her suddenly lowered his body and lifted up the corner of her bathrobe, roughly. That scorching sensation, along with a hint of anger, penetrated her in an instant. The force was so strong that it could not wait to penetrate her. The penetration, which was filled with anger, almost made her scream. Yun Shirshir was shocked. However, in the next second, she smelled a familiar fragrance. She was suddenly startled awake. Just who was this familiar and enchanting fragrance coming from? Muyaja? She turned her head. However, before she could look up, the man lowered his head and sealed her lips fiercely. He entered her and took possession of her. With her lips in his breath connected with hers intimately, he let out a low sigh of satisfaction. Yun Shirshir widened her eyes. With the faint moonlight shining in from the window, she saw the handsome face of the man in front of her. Muyaja's eyes, which were filled with anger, landed firmly on her face. However, this pair of eyes seemed to be slightly sharp. How could it be him? Yun Shirshir was shocked at first. However, when she noticed the sharp anger in his eyes, she felt even more depressed. He seemed to be angry. However, he did not give her much space to think. He held her tightly in his arms and took possession of her. He was fierce and urgent. She could not help but fall into a romantic atmosphere. The room was filled with the ambiguous atmosphere of love. Yaja wanted her. He was going crazy. How long had it been since he had sex with her? He could no longer remember. He only remembered how much he wanted to smash his computer when he saw the reality show, The Love Diary. When he thought of his woman in the show, in front of the camera, with a shy smile on her face and a spoon in her hand, feeding another man, he had nowhere to vent his anger. When he found out that she was going to attend the Milan Fashion Week, he specially ordered his assistant to pick a gown from the Louis Vuitton headquarters and send it to her. However, she did not wear it. Instead, she wore another revealing gown. His anger was hard to quell. Could it be that this woman didn't know that he had never allowed anyone else to witness her beauty? Everything about her, be it beauty or sweetness, should be enjoyed by him alone. However, she had displayed her beauty in front of everyone other than him. He was very angry. He found out which hotel she was staying at and pressed the doorbell. No one opened the door for a long time. At that instant, his heart was filled with anxiety. He thought she was in some kind of danger, or perhaps he had encountered some inhuman, unspoken rules. Perhaps she was inexperienced, so she didn't know the depth of Fashion Week. He knew the unspoken rules of Fashion Week like the back of his hand. In the past, he had received invitations to attend several fashion weeks. Many of the guests attending the Fashion Week were celebrities from all walks of life. Some artists would send themselves to the hotels where these celebrities were staying in order to advance their career. Even if some artists didn't have such awareness, some companies would still do the same. If the artist refused, he would force the issue. During the Fashion Week, there were a lot of dirty things happening in unknown corners. Chapter 1464. While she was blow-drying her hair, he sat in the room and waited for her. While he was waiting for her, she received a WeChat notification on her cell phone. Someone had sent her a message. However, the sender was Gu Xingzi's profile picture. Mu Yaja glanced at it from the corner of his eye and saw Gu Xingzi's name. Somehow, he unlocked the phone and read the message. He knew very well that this was her private matter. However, no matter who sent the message, he wouldn't ask about it. The only thing he hated was Gu Xingzi's name. Even now, he still couldn't forget the scene from that day. In one of the scenes in The Green Apple, he stood at the door and watched with his own eyes as Yun Shirshir held Gu Xingzi's face in her hands and kissed him passionately. What Yun Shirshir didn't know was that he was trembling with anger as he stood at the door and watched the scene unfold. He was obsessed with emotional cleanliness, whether it was physical or spiritual. He didn't want to see her being overly intimate with anyone. His possessiveness towards her was deeply rooted in his bones. Even if it was an act, a kiss, or a hug, he wouldn't allow it. That day, he returned home early only to see such a scene. His chest was filled with anger, and he was about to explode. He tried his best to suppress his anger and didn't explode on the spot. However, Mu Yaja still remembered the look in his eyes when he looked at Gu Xingzi. At that moment, when Gu Xingzi hugged Yun Shirshir, there was a trace of intense struggle and agitation in his eyes. No one understood a man better than a man. Mu Yaja could see that Gu Xingzi's love for Yun Shirshir was at odds with his complicated emotions. Gu Xingzi acted out that scene vividly portraying Yin Dongyu's conflicting and intense emotions. However, was his acting really that good? He didn't think so. Words could deceive people, but at that moment, the emotions and longing in Gu Xingzi's eyes could not deceive anyone. Others might not be able to tell, but Mu Yaja could tell what Gu Xingze was thinking about his woman. Gu Xingze liked her. Perhaps this feeling could no longer be described simply with the word, like. His desire for her could not be hidden from him. It was more than just liking. In the first episode of The Love Diary, the scene of Gu Xingze playing the piano for her was still vivid in her mind. Yun sure couldn't help but cry because Gu Xingze's voice was so moving and emotional that everyone present couldn't help but cry. However, Mu Yaja knew very well that Gu Xingze had integrated his inexplicable feelings for Yun Shir into his song. This man had to be guarded against. He opened the WeChat message and saw Gu Xingze's message. Shir, tomorrow night on the red carpet, I'll give you 2 gowns. Can you pick one? You'll look beautiful in it. His eyes darkened at once. He was infuriated by Gu Xingze's message. He was giving her a gown too. Could it be that he still had feelings for her? He seemed to care too much about her. It even exceeded the distance that should be maintained between colleagues. What about her? Would she agree to it? Would she wear the gown he gave her on the red carpet? Damn it! His woman was being coveted by so many people. He felt very unhappy. Chapter 1465. Yun Shir did not know what was wrong with him today. He suddenly appeared in Milan, suddenly appeared in the hotel she was staying at, and suddenly attacked her from behind. He wanted her, and he wanted her very fiercely. He carried her to the bed and did it again. For 2 whole hours, no matter how she begged for mercy, no matter how she refused, until she weakly collapsed on the bed and no longer had the strength to struggle. Tonight, he was like a youthful and ignorant 17 or 18-year-old youth who had just experienced his first taste of forbidden fruit and did not know how to control himself. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment and had endured for several long centuries. It was as if he could not hear her begging for mercy, could not feel her refusal. His mind was completely immersed in this charm and gentleness. At this moment, Yun Shir even had the heart to die. She weakly hugged the pillow. Her heart was sullen. This man was eyeing her covetously. He clearly wanted to cripple her. What was wrong with him today? This man, on the bed, had always been like an overlord, firmly grasping the initiative, but he rarely lost control like tonight. How she wanted him to be gentler. But tonight, it was as if he had been possessed by some kind of demon. What he wanted was so ruthless. After the passion subsided, he lay beside her and looked at her. However, she could not catch her breath for a long time. After the affair, the room was like a charming and gentle land of gentleness. She lay on the bed, the white blanket covering her body and covering her lower body. Her bare and fair back was exposed to the air, just like that. Mu Yaja only took one look, and his eyes immediately deepened. This woman, if placed in ancient times, would definitely be a world-destroying enchantress who bewitched the heart of the monarch. Looking from afar, the beautiful lines of her back extended all the way. Such a sexy beauty was hard to describe with words in this world. In the past, she dressed up pure and refined, like a student who had just stepped out of school. She was young and tender, as if water could be squeezed out with a pinch. However, now that she had shed those pure and innocent clothes lying beside him, she was even more like an enchantress, extremely charming and flirtatious. She lay lazily on the bed, her long black hair draped over the pillow, spreading out like clouds. Her eyes were half open, and she was so tired that she didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. This time, he had tormented her quite a bit. Mu Yaja lowered his eyes to look at her, as if he had lost all his strength. Only then did the anger in his heart dissipate a little. Seeing that she was exhausted, he couldn't help but feel a little heartache and blame himself. At the same time, He was a little angry at himself for not being able to control himself and torturing her to such an overdraft. Thus, he half propped himself up, slightly bowed his head, and quietly stared at her for a while before kissing her face. Her face was flushed with a seductive pink that spread from her ears all the way to her cheeks. The more he looked at her, the more his heart ached for her. His handsome face pressed down on hers, and his warm lips pressed against hers. It was as if he was comforting her, and he pecked her gently. Chapter 1466. She still couldn't stop panting, her weak moans ringing in his ears like a kitten's furry claws, scratching his heart coquettishly. Muyaja gazed at her slightly angry eyes and gently touched her pink lips. Following that, gentle kisses landed on her forehead between her brows and then to her smooth chin. He continued to do so as if to comfort her. Her eyelashes drooped, and she didn't look at him directly, as if she was angry. When she thought about how intense they were on the bed just now, and how this man used those shameful actions to possess her, she felt like she couldn't wait to crawl up and dig a hole so that she could bury her boiling hot face that was about to drip blood. The aftertaste of the affair still hadn't faded, and her mind was still blank and short-circuited for a long time. He half lay on top of her and gently kissed her to comfort her. After a long while, she finally regained some of her senses, but she was still a little angry. Unbelievable. She had never thought that she could have such a crazy side in bed. When she thought about it, she felt her face become even hotter. So, ignoring his comforting words, she turned her face away and buried her burning face deep into the pillow. Muyaja still didn't let her off and kissed her ear charmingly. However, he seemed to be infatuated with her soft and fair earlobes. As his tongue gently traced the outline, his scorching hot breath took her in and played with her lips. The scorching hot breath by her ear and the intentional teasing made her feel a little unbearable. It was as if he was seducing her and wanted to confuse her. Her body was still in the aftertaste and was still very sensitive. How could she withstand his charm? Yun Shirshir groaned in dissatisfaction and avoided his intimacy. She tightly pursed her bright red lips and forced herself not to let out any erratic breaths. Muyaja looked at her and suddenly laughed softly. Looking at her cute and delicate appearance, for a moment, he felt that this woman was so silly that she was adorable. So much so that the anger in his stomach disappeared in a puff of smoke. As long as this woman was by his side, he would completely lose his temper. When Yun Shirshir heard him snickering, she became even angrier. She couldn't help but raise her head to glare at him with her flushed face. "What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?" She glared at him with her mesmerizing eyes, a hint of coquettishness in them. Her face was still flushed from the lingering effects of their lovemaking, and there was a hint of anger in her eyes. Seeing her like this, Muyaja laughed again. He could tell that she was being shy. She was really shy. He was a little amused. This woman, it had been so long, but she was still shy. After sex, she would still show this shy and seductive look. Her skin seemed to be really thin. She also seemed to be very pure. Thinking back to what had happened just now, and how she had repeatedly begged for mercy while gasping for breath, Muyaja increasingly felt that this little woman was truly a rare and precious beauty. When he smiled, her face burned even hotter. "Stop laughing." Yun Shirshir couldn't help but mutter and reach out to push his shoulder. However, the strength in her hands was so pitiful. After a few pushes, the man still didn't move an inch. For a moment, she was even more annoyed. She turned her face away again and ignored him. Chapter 1467. When Muyaja saw this, he could not help but laugh. He reached out his hand and gently stroked her silky hair. He liked her jet black hair. As he stroked it, her silky hair flowed through the gaps of his fingers like spring water. It was also like high-quality brocade, glowing with an extremely healthy glow. In his heart, women should have long, silky hair. When he looked at her from afar, her silhouette should have long, silky hair that reached her waist. When she looked back with a smile, she should be extremely charming. This woman's appearance belonged to the classic style. Her charming eyes were like silk, and when she smiled, she was extremely flirtatious. With such beautiful hair, she was even more gorgeous and seductive. He could not help but laugh. With one hand, he lifted a lock of her silky hair and kissed her ear nonstop. After kissing for a while, he seemed to be engrossed in it, but he still did not know when to stop. When he pressed his lips against her ear, he smiled faintly. There was a hint of mischief in his words. "Little thing, are you shy?" Yun Shirshir's face became even hotter. She buried her face in the pillow and ignored his teasing. She ignored him. Not only did Mu Yaja not find it boring, but he even enjoyed her shy and seductive manner even more. Reaching out, he covered her ample bosom in an instant. Yun Shirshir groaned. She could not help but shrink into the corner to avoid his provocative actions. However, what kind of man was Mu Yaja? How could he give her such a chance? The more shy she was, the more he wanted to force her to submit obediently. In front of a woman, men probably enjoyed the process of conquering her the most. Mu Yaja leaned over her body. He did not shy away at all. Yun Shirshir only had to look up. From the corner of her eye, she could easily see his lean and muscular body. Her face was boiling hot, but she could not help but think angrily in her heart. How could this man maintain such a good figure? Generally speaking, it should be very difficult for someone who sits in the office all day to maintain such a textbook figure, right? He also did not go to the gym often. How could he maintain such a lean and muscular figure? This was really infuriating. She thought about how she could only eat a certain amount of calories every day in order to appear beautiful in front of the camera at the fashion show. To be honest, she was really hungry, especially after what had happened just now. Her stamina had been completely drained. Now, she only felt that her stomach was almost sticking to her back from hunger. Yun Shirshir felt so wronged that she wanted to cry. What happened? Mu Yaja furrowed his brows slightly when he saw her aggrieved look. She cried because he bullied her? Yun Shirshir snorted and turned her head away, ignoring him. How could he understand her sadness? Mu Yaja held her small face and turned it back. What's wrong? His little face is so bitter, as if he has suffered a great grievance. Yun Shirshir pouted and glared at him as if she wanted to say something. Just as she was about to open her mouth and complain, a grumbling sound came from her stomach. Goo! Her stomach groaned miserably, as if it was complaining about her heartlessness. Yun Shirshir's expression froze instantly. She bit her lip in embarrassment and felt even more wronged. Mu Yaja looked stunned. It was obvious that he had very good hearing in this quiet room, so he had clearly heard that miserable groan. Chapter 1468. Mu Yaja looked at her green eyes, and then looked at her lips that were constantly licking. Beside his ears, he could hear the moans coming from her stomach. Goo! This cry became even more uncontrollable. One cry after another. It sounded like it was wailing, yet it also sounded like it was bitterly begging for mercy. Coupled with Yun Shirshir's extremely gloomy and conflicted expression, Mu Yaja felt like laughing. Puffed, he burst out laughing. Yun Shirshir glared at him. What are you laughing at? Nothing. I'm laughing at your stupidity. Mu Yaja poked her forehead lovingly. Stupid woman, you're hungry. Don't you know how to eat? I want to eat it too, she mumbled, feeling aggrieved. She looked like a resentful housewife who had been locked up in her room for too long. Muyaja was even more amused. He cupped her bitter little face and gently ravaged it. "If you want to eat, why don't you eat? Qin Zhou won't let me eat." Yun Shishir was angry and wronged. In a fit of anger, she ruthlessly betrayed her revolutionary comrade, Qin Zhou. When Muyaja heard this, he was furious. "He won't let you eat. Why won't he let you eat?" "Because he's afraid that if I eat, I'll have a small belly and won't be able to wear the gown at tomorrow's banquet." Yun Shishir said frankly. Qin Zhou had put in a lot of effort for her. Reality proved that it was indeed very dangerous when she tried on the gown today. If her belly had been just a little bit bigger, she wouldn't have been able to wear the gown sent by the brand. However, the gown sent by the Gongjia seemed to be one size bigger. That was true. He had completely relied on the Gongjia's measurements. Moreover, under Qinzhou's training these few days, she had lost a lot of weight. When Muyaja heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. What was this Qinzhou doing? No wonder he felt that when he was holding her waist, it was barely satisfactory. She had lost a lot of weight. He even suspected that if he used a little more strength, her waist would be broken by him. "You're not allowed to starve yourself, do you hear me?" Muyaja was a little angry as he ravaged her face. "You won't eat just because they don't let you? Why are you so obedient in front of others? You'll do whatever you say." Yun Shishir, "Stupid woman." Muyaja paused, stretched out his big palm, and patted her asterisk. "Get up, eat." With that said, he picked up the bathrobe that had been thrown to the ground. He stretched his arms slightly and pulled her into his embrace. With one arm around her and the other holding the bathrobe, he began to put it on her. He had never personally dressed anyone before, so his movements were inevitably a little clumsy. Yun Shishir blushed immediately. Was this man, who was helping her put on her clothes, really that domineering Muyaja? Yun Shishir pursed her lips. Somehow, she felt that in his eyes, he had always treated her like a child. She looked up and saw his uncanny workmanship and handsome side profile. For a moment, she was a little mesmerized. His side profile, no matter from which angle, was handsome and perfect. This man was simply God's favorite. She even found it hard to believe that this perfect man in front of her would be the man she would hold for the rest of her life. Her man, these 4 words were enough to make her heart flutter. She didn't dare to imagine. Chapter 1469. Putting aside this man's dominance and professionalism, he seemed to be flawless. However, even though he was a little overbearing, he could be so adorable at times. In her heart, an inexplicable sense of belonging arose spontaneously. Muyaja suddenly turned his eyes and glanced at her. Yun Shishir felt guilty for a moment. Then she regained her composure. She struggled to get up and tried to snatch the bathrobe from his hands. "I'll do it myself. I'll wear it myself. You don't have to." Muyaja snorted coldly and slapped her hand away. Yun Shishir groaned in pain. She rubbed the back of her hand that was slightly red from his slap and glared at him angrily. This man's strength was really strong. Just a light slap, and her hand was already red. "I'll do it myself." She reached out her hand again unwillingly, but he didn't allow it and slapped her hand back again. "I'll help you wear it." It wasn't a question, but an order. He seemed to enjoy the process of serving her. Seeing that Yun Shishir still wanted to say something, he frowned and didn't say anything more. However, he was imposing without being angry. Yun Shishir gritted her teeth and couldn't help but glare at him again. However, this glare, which she was originally glaring at him angrily, seemed a little too flirtatious in his eyes. Hence, he suddenly lowered his head and bit her lips fiercely. In the deep kiss, there was a hint of fierceness, as if he couldn't wait to swallow her alive. Under the deterrence of his gaze, no matter how wronged Yun Shirshir felt, she could only obey obediently. He draped the bathrobe over her body. While serving her, he didn't forget to take the opportunity to take advantage of her. Yun Shirshir was angry, but didn't dare to say anything. She allowed him to do whatever he wanted. Moreover, she didn't have the strength to resist him now. After he put on the bathrobe for her, he slapped her butt again. "What do you want to eat?" Yun Shirshir's thoughts had drifted far away. When she heard him ask, she regained her train of thought. She pondered for a moment and said, "I want to eat everything. Is that okay?" Muyaja, glutton. Muyaja walked into the living room and ordered an exquisite set meal. Soon, the waiter rang the doorbell and presented the set meals one after another. When Yun Shirshir walked out of the bedroom, she saw that in the dining room there were 2 exquisite candlesticks on the dining table. Under the warm candlelight, there were 10 exquisite dishes on the table. She only took one look, and her stomach growled again. She felt even hungrier. Creamy mushroom spaghetti, white truffle puffs, French-baked snails, filet mignon, good heavens! Yun Shirshir could only feel the saliva in her mouth increasing. She swallowed hard and managed to maintain her reserved posture with great difficulty, resisting the urge to pounce over. Muyaja leaned against her back and hugged her shoulders. He teased, "What's wrong? So impatient. Stupid woman, you have to be more reserved and ladylike." "Yes." Yun Shirshir sat at the dining table. Muyaja also sat down. Both of them looked at each other. Her eyes suddenly curved into crescents as she smiled. "This is my first time enjoying a candlelight dinner." Muyaja raised his eyebrows and laughed. "This is not considered dinner anymore. Candlelight supper. Try it." Muyaja rested his chin on his hand lazily and looked at her. "This is authentic Italian cuisine. The taste was not as good as in China. It was authentic." Chapter 1470. The moment Muyaja finished his sentence, she raised her fork and knife, and a gust of wind swept away the clouds. Muyaja propped his chin on his hand, looking dumbstruck. His thin lips parted slightly in surprise, but he forgot to close them. Yun Shirshir did not seem to notice the stunned expression on his face at this moment. Right now, she only cared about filling her stomach. She raised her fork and knife, ate a mouthful of steak, and took a mouthful of pasta. Before she could sigh in satisfaction, she swallowed a mouthful of salad. She was so hungry that she did not care about tasting the food carefully. She only wanted to fill her stomach and did not care about anything else. Muyaja was dumbstruck. His eyebrows twitched hard, and a row of black lines appeared on his face. Under his burning gaze, Yun Shirshir looked up and saw Muyaja's stiff expression at this moment. For a moment, she was stunned. She furrowed her eyebrows and asked in a muffled voice, "What's wrong?" Muyaja suddenly retracted his gaze and pondered for a moment. "Forgive me for being blunt. Stupid woman, the way you eat reminds me of a word." "What is it?" Yun Shirshir's mouth was full. Her mouth was full of food, so it was inevitable that she could not speak clearly. Muyaja sized her up again. Then he spat out a word mercilessly. "Refugee." Yun Shirshir's face fell instantly. "Hey, you're not allowed to say that about me." Muyaja knocked on the table and commented sincerely, "This is the truth." Yun Shirshir protested innocently, "I'm really hungry. So, I can't care about anything else." Muyaja was speechless for a moment. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he could not hide his helpless smile. "You should at least pay attention to your table manners. Don't you want your image as an idol?" Yun Shirshir pouted and asked him instead, "Why do I need to pay attention to my image in front of you?" Anyway, I don't have to be secretive in front of you, right? She pouted coquettishly. While he was still in a daze, she lowered her head again and left. Mu Yaja stared blankly for a long time, unable to recover from her words for a long time. In front of you, do I still need to worry about hiding anything? Mu Yaja suddenly smiled. This woman sometimes was really annoying, but most of the time, she was so cute. How adorable! These words were extremely pleasing to the ears. He liked it when she acted coquettishly in front of him without hiding anything. It was a complete and unreserved look. This was the real her. Unlike in front of the camera, she always maintained a noble demeanor and was as elegant and perfect as a princess. In front of him, she was so straightforward. He loved this side of her. His gaze landed on her body. In this short period of time, she had swallowed another mouthful of steak. The oil stains stained her tender red lips. Watching her eat with such relish, just by looking at it, he felt like he had tasted the marrow and wanted to taste it. On her body, a feast for the eyes was vividly displayed. Even for someone like him, he couldn't help but be tempted by her. As a result, watching her eat, he also felt a little hungry. After Yun Shirshir finished eating, all the delicious food on the table was in her stomach. Muyaja was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. She could eat so much. He did not order a lot of food, but according to her usual appetite, she probably could not finish it all. It looked like this little thing was really hungry. Chapter 1471. What a gluttonous little kitten. At night, Yun Shirshir was sleeping soundly as she laid her head on his arm. However, he was still in high spirits. His large palm gently stroked her swollen belly and gently flicked it from time to time. It seemed to be bouncy. Not bad. It felt good to the touch. It was a wonderful thing in life to eat and drink to one's heart's content. Of course, the end result of eating and drinking to one's heart's content was that when Yun Shirshir was brought to the Louis Vuitton show by Chinjo the next day, she realized that the zipper was stuck at her waist when she tried on the gown. The stylist was still a little suspicious. When she was doing her makeup yesterday, she had put on the ink-style gown for Yun Shirshir. That gown was even tighter at the waist than this one. It was even slightly too big for her. How could it be that the zipper was stuck at her waist after just one night? It didn't make sense. Shirshir's waist was clearly very thin. She tried again and tried to pull it up forcefully. However, she couldn't pull it up no matter what. At this point, the stylist didn't dare to use force anymore because the gown was extremely expensive to make. If she used too much force and something went wrong, the gown would be damaged. A gown that cost as much as 7 figures wasn't something they could afford. Yun Shirshir stood in front of the mirror and heard the stylist behind her say, weakly, I can't pull it up. You can't pull it up. Yun Shirshir frowned. However, when she realized that the zipper of the gown was stuck at her waist, she felt a little guilty. Chinjo, who was standing outside the fitting room, heard it and asked nervously, "What's going on? What's stuck?" Yun Shirshir looked even more embarrassed. Was it because she ate too much at dinner last night? It couldn't be, right? It had been 10 hours since she had dinner. No matter how bad it was, she should have digested everything in one night, right? Why was the gown stuck at her waist? Chinjo's angry voice came from outside the fitting room. Shirshir. He only called out her name, but the suppressed gunpowder in his voice could not be concealed at all. Yun Shirshir swallowed nervously and laughed dryly. "Ha ha, President Chin, if you have something to say, please, I remember that with your size. This gown will definitely fit you." Yun Shirshir felt so guilty that she didn't say anything. What happened? Yun Shirshir looked up at the sky, so nervous that she broke out in cold sweat. Chin-jo leaned against the door, and his sinister voice drifted into her ears. "Don't tell me you ate something last night?" At this moment, Chin-jo's expression was as serious as a judge of the Azura Palace. Yun Shirshir was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She hesitated for a long time before she mumbled, I ate a little." "You ate a little?" Chin-jo obviously doubted her words. Yun Shirshir corrected her again. "A little more than a little." "How much did he eat?" Chin-jo was a little angry and questioned her sternly. Yun Shirshir was so scared that she confessed everything. "I ate steak, salad, pasta, white truffle puffs." Chin-jo's expression was stiff and cold. After Yun Shirshir finished speaking in one breath, she felt that the huge studio fell into a dead silence. "Why didn't you eat more? Why don't you just stuff yourself to death?" Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and pretended to be dead. Chapter 1472. Now you're pretending to be mute? Your mouth must have been wide open when you were eating, right? Yun Shirshir. Damn, this Chin-jo was really vicious with his words. Yun Shirshir was embarrassed for a moment before she said helplessly, "Master Chin-jo, I was really too hungry." "Too hungry?" Chin-jo raised his eyebrows and said in an unfriendly tone. "Yes, so I couldn't hold it in." Chin-jo questioned again, "Couldn't hold it in?" "Because I haven't eaten for a few days." "So you ate and drank so much the night before the red carpet that you burst your stomach," Chin-jo mocked mercilessly. Yun Shirshir said in an aggrieved tone, "I know I was wrong. I'm sorry, Wax." "Wax your head." Chin-jo exploded. "What's the use of apologizing to me? You're about to go to the show. Originally, you should be in front of Louis Vuitton's executives in 2 hours, showing off your noble and elegant temperament to your heart's content. But now you're in the fitting room, stuck in the zipper of your gown. Ha ha, you don't know how to control yourself at all. I clearly told you to bear with it for the next 2 days, but you ended up eating like this. If you appear in front of Louis Vuitton's executives with a bulging stomach, what would they think?" Yun Shirshir. Chin-jo snorted. "Louis Vuitton is looking for brand ambassadors. They have to be beautiful and have a great figure. But what about you? Do you think this is a pregnant woman's red carpet show?" Yun Shirshir said in a sobbing tone, "It's not that exaggerated." The stylist couldn't take it anymore. She walked out of the fitting room and comforted Chin-jo. "CEO Chin, it's useless to be angry at Shirshir now. Why don't we think of a way? I brought a corset. Why don't we put a corset on Shirshir? She might be able to wear the gown then." There were pros and cons to a corset. The pros were that with a corset, one could tighten the waist and wear the gown. The cons were that a corset was harmful to the body. Moreover, with a corset added to the gown, one would inevitably look a little bloated. Therefore, the corset had to be tighter than normal. This person was going to suffer a little. Yun Shirshir's face fell when she heard that she had to wear a girdle. Chin-jo crossed his arms. His expression was unfriendly, but he didn't say a word. The stylist carefully probed. "What do you mean? What else can we do?" Chin-jo said unhappily, "What time is it now? There's not much time left. Hurry up and bring the girdle over." Yes, the stylist took the girdle and put it on for Yun Shirshir. After a long time, the zipper was finally pulled up. However, it was Yun Shirshir's first time wearing a corset. She couldn't get used to it for a while. When she walked out of the fitting room, her face was red. Obviously, she was uncomfortable because of the tight fit. Her expression was a little unnatural. Chin-jo walked in front of her, snorted coldly, and ordered, "Look up." Yun Shirshir subconsciously looked up. "Stick out your chest. Smile." Yun Shirshir curved the corners of her lips. Chin-jo crossed his arms and looked elegant and cool. He looked her up and down and then nodded with slight satisfaction. However, he still couldn't help but poke her head. You greedy little cat, who asked you to steal food." Yun Shirshir looked aggrieved. "See, you've suffered. Do you dare to do it again? Next time?" Yun Shirshir shook her head and looked bitter. Qin Zhou looked at her pitiful look and couldn't get angry no matter what. "All right, I'll let you off today." Chapter 1473. She spent the entire afternoon checking out the fashion show, accepting media interviews, taking street shots, and shooting a magazine shoot. Her schedule was packed to the brim. Yun Shirshir felt like she was going to fly like a hydrogen balloon. When they arrived in Milan, Yun Shirshir had to admit that Qin Zhou had a lot of resources in his hands. In fact, compared to Lin Ji, as a newcomer, she did not have Lin Ji's fame. Even so, Qin Zhou still managed to get her a Louis Vuitton endorsement deal and even arranged a role for her in a Hollywood blockbuster. This might be a common occurrence for A-listers, but for a newcomer like her, it was really unbelievable. With such a low exposure rate, it was indeed shocking that she was able to obtain such two international resources. On the other hand, although Lin Ji was more famous than her in the country, she could only sit on the cold bench overseas. Lin Ji's manager could not compare to Qin Zhou's resources, so the pitiful Lin Ji could only grit her teeth and watch Yun Shirshir bask in limitless glory. She changed into one gown after another, and the interviews came one after another without any rest. Lin Ji was so angry that her teeth were itching. How could she not be angry? She was so jealous that her eyes were about to turn red. When she arrived at the Milan fashion show, she had imagined that everything would be perfect. She would change into a beautiful gown and walk under the flashing spotlights. She would flash her elegance to her heart's content and leave her most beautiful smile on the camera. But the reality was cruel. She could only watch as Yun Shirshir was constantly scrambled by the media. She stood among the crowd, waving and smiling like a high and mighty goddess, noble and elegant. Her every frown and smile attracted the media and spotlights like a flock of ducks. Compared to home, her surroundings were too cold and cheerless. The only media outlet that had interviewed her was one that she had a good relationship with in the country. What made her even angrier was that within a few minutes of the interview, as soon as they saw Yun Shirshir, they walked away with their cameras, leaving her alone on the cold bench. She wished she could turn her gaze into a pair of sharp daggers and mercilessly stab holes into Yun Shirshir's irksome body. Shameless be asterisk TCH. It's been a whole day, and she's like a butterfly, never ending. Lin Ji's assistant sneered softly. Obviously, she didn't like Yun Shirshir either. "I'm really suspecting that the media, which has been swarming around her like flies, are paid by Yun Shirshir at a high price." That's not the case. The foreign media can't compare to the domestic media. If these media outlets were all hired by her, then it shows that Yun Shirshir's background is not ordinary. Lin Ji paused and narrowed her eyes. "There are some things that you can't say. Be careful with your words and actions." She sounded like she was reprimanding her. Her voice was a little too loud when she was criticizing Yun Shirshir just now. The assistant seemed to have realized that he had raised his voice a little. He lowered his voice and said, "If you didn't hire him at a high price, how else can you explain that? She just debuted, and her only movie hasn't been released yet. How could she be so famous?" Lin Ji snorted. "Why don't you take a look at who her manager is?" Chapter 1474. At the mention of Qin Zhou, she knew that this manager's resources were not to be underestimated. Hence, she had nothing to say. On the night of Louis Vuitton's special event, there would be a Milan fashion show banquet. The venue for the banquet would be the famous Milan Palace. As the former seat of government in Milan, the Milan Palace had not only carried the glory of history for many centuries, but it had also become an important cultural center, creating new miracles. The guests attending the banquet were all top celebrities from various industries. They were all star-studded and influential. World-class supermodels, international fashion moguls, Italian designers, the chairman of Milan Fashion Week, and top designers were all present. The lineup for the banquet was dazzling. On the list of invited guests, the top celebrities in the country were also on the list. Lin Ji had also tried her best to get an entry ticket. She was so excited that she was about to cry. It was a great honor for an artist to be invited to the Milan Palace for a fashion banquet. It was like stepping into the Hall of Fame of the fashion industry, shining with stars. As an artist collaborating with Louis Vuitton, Lin Ji also had to go to the styling room to get her hair done. Hence, it was inevitable that she would bump into Yun Shirshir again. Qin Zhou turned on his mocking mode the moment he saw Lin Ji. "Hey, who is this? What's her name again? I can't remember. Shirshir, is she also on the list of invitees for this banquet?" Yun Shirshir pretended to be at a loss. "I don't remember." "Oh, look at my memory. How could I forget? This Milan fashion banquet is divided into invited guests and media collaborators. Invited guests are the VIPs invited by the organizers. Media collaborators, on the other hand, didn't receive an invitation but used the media's qualification to get in." Qin Zhou paused. Then he sneered and said coldly, "I was wondering why I didn't see her name on the list of invited guests. So, she used the media's name to get in." This sentence, however, was full of killing power. Lin Ji's face was extremely ugly, but she still pretended to be elegant and argued, "President Qin, you must be mistaken. This time, I'm attending the banquet as the spokesperson for Louis Vuitton's new spring collection. What you said is nonsense." However, Qin Zhou smiled coldly and said disdainfully, You're so smug just because you're the spokesperson for the new spring collection. You're really something." Lin Ji was completely speechless. She wanted to say something, but stopped. However, in front of Qin Zhou, she felt that no matter how much she refuted, she had no power. Lin Ji stomped her feet angrily and went to change into her gown. She didn't want to embarrass herself in front of Qin Zhou. Yun Shirshir secretly sighed in her heart. She had seen a lot of things, but when it came to poisonous tongues, Qin Zhou was still a level higher. "Go and change your clothes." Qin Zhou exhorted her. Yun Shirshir went into the changing room with the assistant who was holding the gown. Qin Zhou raised his hand to check the time. He walked to the balcony and made a call to Gu Xingze to arrange a meeting. Lin Ji changed into her gown and came out. She saw that Qin Zhou wasn't around. When she saw Yun Shirshir in the changing room, her eyes darted around, and she suddenly thought of a wicked move. Thus, she waved her hand and called her assistant over. Then, she whispered a few words in her ear. "Remember, take advantage of Qin Zhou's absence, and quickly do it." Chapter 1475. Lin Ji sneered and glanced in the direction of Yun Shirshir's dressing room with evil intentions. Then, she went into the dressing room to get her hair done. "Humph! Yun Shirshir, aren't you smug? Just wait and see. Let's see how lawless you can be when Qin Zhou isn't around." Lin Ji's assistant was called Xiaoling. She had been following Lin Ji since her debut. She was very efficient in her work and shared a common enemy with Lin Ji. Moreover, she was very vicious. She remembered that when Lin Ji was filming a period drama, a second female lead had stolen her role. Under Lin Ji's instructions, the assistant had dragged the second female lead to a hotel and beaten her up. The assistant had stripped her of all her clothes and taken many unsightly photos. The assistant had then used the photos to blackmail the second female lead and demanded that she respect Lin Ji in everything she did. This second female lead had just graduated from an art school. She had no power or background. Because she was a professional, her acting skills were not bad. Although it was a supporting role, it was not easy to get this role. When she acted, she was reserved and professional. Compared to other actors, she was a more innocent little girl. After being blackmailed with so many unsightly photos, the second female lead was scared witless. Therefore, when she was on the set, she did as Lin Ji wished. Not only was she obedient, but she also wanted to worship Lin Ji like a living Buddha. This was not a big deal. After being scolded by the director, Lin Ji was in a bad mood and often vented her anger on the second female lead. The way she vented her anger was disgusting. Let's not talk about the heartless ones for now. Once Lin Ji came back from the set because she was angry, she took off her shoes and asked the second female lead to lick her feet clean. How overboard was this? Lin Ji actually dared to ask for it. The second female lead could not accept it and was very unwilling. Lin Ji called Xiaoling over, and when Xiaoling arrived, she beat her up again. Only then did the second female lead obediently give in. Moreover, she cared a lot about her innocence, so she could only obey humbly. Not only did she lick Lin Ji's feet clean, she was even forced to drink a few mouthfuls of the water used to wash her feet. The entire process was recorded by Xiaoling. The next day, the second female lead went to the set. When the director saw the bruises on her arms and shoulders, he thought that the bruises were caused by something dirty. Hence, he fired her from the set on the grounds that she was having an affair with a man on set. Actually, this second female lead was a pity. She was pretty, capable, and kind-hearted. If it weren't for Lin Ji, she might have shot to fame with this role. However, after the drama aired, she left the entertainment industry and went into hiding. After leaving the entertainment industry, she married a rich businessman with her good looks. However, Lin Ji found out about this. Therefore, she sent the unsightly photos that the girl had been forced to take to the rich businessman's mailbox. She also spread a rumor that the girl had been involved in a relationship with a man and a woman in the crew. She was called out by the director and kicked out of the crew. When the rich businessman found out about it, he was so angry that he divorced her after half a year of marriage. Then, Lin Ji used some tricks to seduce this rich businessman. She was booked by him for a period of time and obtained some resources from him. Through this rich businessman, she met a famous director and used this famous director's TV series to become famous. Chapter 1476. On the surface, she looked bright and innocent. Only then did Mushi fall in love with her. What she did not know, however, was that she was a very sinister person in private. In fact, Lin Ji was very petty and petty. Once she bore a grudge against someone, she would not let the matter rest until her reputation was ruined. Earlier, she had whispered to her assistant to sneak to Yun Shishir's changing room with her phone and secretly take a few photos of Yun Shishir changing into her gown. This was not the first time she had done such a despicable thing. Xiaoling smiled knowingly. Taking advantage of Qinzhou's absence, she sneaked to Yun Shishir's changing room and stood on a stool. With the help of the selfie stick, she stretched her hand in the direction of Yun Shishir's changing room. The camera was muted, so Yun Shishir did not notice even after a dozen photos were taken. She was struggling with her gown. Louis Vuitton's gowns were more cumbersome to wear, so she was focused on putting on nipple pads. The stylist wanted her to squeeze as much cleavage as possible. The more obvious it was, the better. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, was frowning and did not want to be too revealing. Xiaoling succeeded just like that. Holding the photos in her hands, she was secretly delighted for a while. She then opened the door and was about to go out to ask for a reward from Lin Ji. When she opened the door just now, she only felt a tall figure standing at the door, as if blocking all the light. His tall and big body stood tall like a dark cloud. Xiao Ling was startled and her heart trembled. She raised her head and saw a man as handsome as a god. Xiao Ling's heart tightened. It was not because of this man's handsome looks that angered both men and gods, nor was it because of his powerful aura that made one's heart tremble. It was because at this moment, this man's eyes were as sharp as ice, piercing her body and making her tremble. Mu Yaja blocked the door, his handsome face gloomy. He had just arrived at the studio and heard that Yun Shirshir was in the changing room, so he wanted to take a look. As soon as she arrived, she saw a selfie stick sticking out from the ceiling of Yun Shirshir's changing room. She could vaguely see that the camera had been turned on and had secretly taken a few pictures. His eyes were extremely sharp, and he immediately saw that the phone screen had captured Yun Shirshir's half-naked body. His anger immediately surged. Who was it? How dare he secretly take photos of her changing clothes? Xiao Ling was shocked by his expression, but she did not know the identity of the man in front of her. She asked stupidly, "Who are you? Don't you know it's scary to suddenly appear at the door?" Mu Yaja was silent, but his eyes fell on her phone. Xiao Ling did not notice his anger at all. She looked around and asked suspiciously, "Who are you? Don't you know that this is the VIP lounge? Unauthorized personnel are not allowed in. What were you doing just now?" Mu Yaja questioned. When Xiao Ling heard this, she was stunned and felt guilty. She instinctively held her phone tightly behind her back and asked innocently, "What does it have to do with you?" However, she was panicking inside. Could it be that this man had come in just now? What a bad time. Could it be that he had seen her every move? Xiao Ling cursed silently and said fiercely. Then she wanted to retreat. "I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. I have something to do. Stop right there." Mu Yaja abruptly grabbed her arm and pulled her back without a word. Chapter 1477. In the changing room, Yun Shirshir was alarmed by the argument outside the door. She put on her gown and hurried out. However, she was stunned when she saw the confrontation at the door. Why are you here?" Yun Shirshir was confused when she saw Mu Yaja. This was Louis Vuitton's VIP room for women. How could he barge in so openly? She took a closer look at the woman in Mu Yaja's hand and found her rather familiar. Yun Shirshir thought about it seriously. Wasn't this Lin Ji's assistant? Why was she here? Just as Yun Shirshir was wondering, Xiao Ling started to struggle fiercely. "You, let go of me. What are you doing?" Although this man was quite handsome, but why was he grabbing her hand for no reason and not letting go? Xiao Ling complained in her heart. Mainly, she felt very guilty and wanted to leave this place quickly. "Hand over your phone." Mu Yaja grabbed one of her hands and glared at her with a gloomy expression. His eyes were filled with rage. He never had the habit of being rough with women, but that didn't mean that he would tolerate it to the end. Xiao Ling was so flustered that she broke out in cold sweat. Qin Zhou had just finished his call when he heard the argument coming from the VIP changing room. He carefully knocked on the door and heard a man's voice. He didn't know what was going on, but the voice of the opposite sex alerted him. He immediately pushed the door open and entered. However, when he saw the confrontation in front of him and saw that the woman Mu Yaja was holding was Lin Ji's assistant, his expression turned ugly. "This is Shirshir's changing room. Why did you sneak in?" Xiao Ling pouted innocently. I went in the wrong way. I didn't do it on purpose. Why are you so agitated?" Mu Yaja sneered at her matter-of-factly manner. "You secretly took photos of her." He said sternly, Yun Shirshir didn't react for a moment when she heard that. However, when she calmed down and saw the phone in Xiaoling's hand, she thought of the scene in the changing room and felt a chill in her heart. She secretly took photos of her. Thinking of this, Yun Shirshir was furious. She took a few steps closer to her and asked sternly, "Did you secretly take a picture of me changing my clothes?" When Qinzhou heard this, he immediately understood. His gaze was no longer as gentle as before. Instead, it became sharp. "You secretly took photos of Shirshir changing clothes." "No." Xiaoling tried her best to defend herself. "Are you guys kidding me? I was just holding my phone, and all of you are actually accusing me of taking photos secretly? I saw it." With only 4 words from Muyaja, Yun Shirshir did not suspect anything. What kind of person was Muyaja? Why would he wish for a nobody for no reason? Hence, she walked forward and snatched the phone while Xiaoling was distracted. "Ah, my phone. Give it back to me." Xiaoling was extremely nervous. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips coldly. Without looking at her, she picked up Xiaoling's phone and opened the screen. The phone was very new. It looked like it was bought a few days ago. It was the latest model of the iPhone 7 Plus. She didn't even have time to set a password. Hence, she opened the photo album and quickly found solid evidence in the album. Chapter 1478. Yun Shirshir's face turned redder and redder. She scrolled through the photos and deleted them one by one. When she was done, she realized that more than 20 photos had been secretly taken. She flew into a rage out of humiliation. Gripping her phone tightly, she glared at him and said angrily, "You secretly took photos of me changing clothes. How can you be so shameless? Who told you to do this?" Muyaja's gaze turned even colder when he heard that. He tightened his grip even more. Xiaoling sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. She felt as if her wrist was about to be broken by this man. Oh my God! What is this man doing? Why is his strength so terrifying? Qinzhou sneered, his eyes filled with mockery. Who else could it be? It must be her master who ordered her to do this. The master he was referring to was none other than Linji. Xiaoling gulped nervously. Before she could explain herself, Yun Shirshir threw her brand-new phone to the ground in a fit of anger. The brand-new iPhone 7 Plus broke into pieces from the violent and intimate contact with the ground. The screen shattered into pieces. Xiaoling cried out in pain. Her heart ached for her newly bought phone. This was a new phone she had just bought. How could it be broken just like that? Xiaoling was furious, but she didn't dare to say anything. At that moment, Lin Ji had just finished doing her hair. Hearing the commotion in the changing room, she hurried over. She was shocked to see such a huge commotion when she opened the door just now. Instinctively, she realized that her assistant had messed up the job. Lin Ji's throat moved. She glared at Xiaoling from the corner of her eye, annoyed at her incompetence. Xiaoling received her cold glare and shrunk her neck in fear. She pursed her lips. Now that she had been caught red-handed, she wanted to cry but had no tears. Lin Ji was only thinking about how to clean up the mess. Thus she quickly asked, "What's the situation?" Muyaja turned around and met her eyes. He glanced at her condescendingly, but didn't say a word. In his eyes, this Lin Ji didn't have the right to make him speak. When Lin Ji saw him, she was so scared that her legs went soft. When she entered the room just now, her attention was all focused on Yun Shirshir and Xiaoling. In her panic, she didn't notice Muyaja's existence at all. However, when he saw that it was him, he was so scared that he couldn't stand still. She had seen him once. This man was the supreme emperor of Huanyu. Muyaja was the CEO of Dishing Financial Group, the highest executive. Huanyu Entertainment was just one of his many businesses. It was said that he was a rather swift and decisive person. Why was he here? Lin Ji was a little confused. What's the situation? Don't you feel guilty asking this question? Qinzhou snorted coldly. He had been in the industry for many years and was quite experienced. How could he not see that Xiao Ling had secretly taken nude photos of Shirshir under Lin Ji's instructions? His mockery made Lin Ji's face even more embarrassed. However, who was she? Her acting skills were superb. When she pretended to be innocent, it was very convincing. Anger and shock appeared on her face. At the same time, she looked at Xiao Ling with a pained expression and said in disappointment, "Xiao Ling, what did you do?" You secretly took nude photos of Yun Shirshir." Lin Ji interrogated sternly. When she said this, it was as if she wanted to push all the blame onto Xiao Ling. Chapter 1479. She thought that Lin Ji would help her exonerate herself, but she didn't expect her to change the topic and pour all the dirty water on her. For a moment, Xiao Ling felt wronged and disappointed. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. "Tell me, did you do it? Did you do it?" Lin Ji glared at her. Her hoarse voice was filled with disappointment and pain. Lin Ji's acting skills were good to begin with, especially at a time like this. It was vividly displayed. Xiao Ling widened her eyes helplessly, her mouth slightly agape. She was caught off guard by Lin Ji's sudden change in attitude. Surrounded by so many people, Lin Ji was the only one on her side. Even though she was the only one on her side, she was still questioning her sternly. She was so scared that her legs almost turned to jelly. What was she doing? What was Lin Ji trying to do? Why was she questioning her so fiercely? Wasn't she the one who ordered her to do all this? Now, not only did she not help to exonerate herself, but she even poured all the dirty water on her. She had to bear such a big black pot. How wronged was she? However, she couldn't blame Lin Ji for not helping her at all. She was already caught red-handed. How could she still argue? Even if Lin Ji wanted to exonerate her, she would only implicate herself. Lin Ji was a person who knew how to sail according to the wind. She looked around and immediately jumped out to clear her name once she saw that the situation was not right. One couldn't help but admire Lin Ji's brilliance. Qin-zhou narrowed his eyes dangerously. He had many doubts about Lin Ji's attitude in his heart. He didn't even need to think about it. Xiao Ling had been ordered. If not for Lin Ji's order, how could she have thought of using such a method to secretly take photos of Shirshir? Lin Ji winked at Xiao Ling from an angle where no one could see, wanting her to cooperate with her act. However, Xiao Ling was in a state of panic at this moment. How could she understand her look? She shrunk her shoulders in fear. She looked at Qinzhou's gloomy face for a while, and then looked at Mu Yaja, who was as awe-inspiring as a god. She was terrified to the extreme, and her lips trembled as she explained, I really didn't, Yun Shirshir said in disgust. I've already seen it. Why are you still trying to defend yourself? Is there any use? Qin-zhou's voice became even harsher. Why did you do that? Why did you think of stealing Shirshir's photos? Are you under someone's orders? Xiao Ling was so shocked that her shoulders trembled. She subconsciously glanced at Lin Ji with a helpless and hesitant gaze. Lin Ji was furious. This Xiao Ling was so stupid. Why didn't he know how to cooperate with her? Thus, she said angrily, I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Why are you still quibbling? Why did you secretly take photos of her? Xiao Ling was aggrieved and scared. She subconsciously wanted to rat Lin Ji out. Lin Ji saw that the situation wasn't right. She rushed in front of Xiao Ling and gave her 2 tight slaps. I've really misjudged you. I didn't expect you to use such despicable methods. Xiao Ling was slapped hard. She only felt a burning pain on her face. Her face was slapped to one side. She subconsciously covered her face and looked at Lin Ji in shock. She didn't expect her to be such a person. Chapter 1480. Sob, sob, sob. She was so aggrieved that she started crying. Lin Ji frowned angrily. You're still crying. How dare you cry? Then, she carried Xiao Ling to Yun Shishir and pushed her. Why are you crying? Apologize to Shishir. Sob, sob, sob. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Xiao Ling had no choice but to apologize while crying. Yun Shishir's face was cold as she looked at the master-servant pair in front of her expressionlessly. Everyone present knew that Xiao Ling was being used by Lin Ji. However, Lin Ji was one step ahead and put on a good show. Xiao Ling was also willing to take the blame, so no one could say anything. Seeing that Yun Shishir's face was still cold, Lin Ji slapped Xiao Ling again. Do you think you can just apologize like that? You're not sincere at all. Kneel down and apologize. You have to make her forgive you. Although Xiao Ling was unwilling, she had no choice but to kowtow under Lin Ji's pressure. Bang, bang, bang. Every time he kowtowed, he would apologize. His voice was loud and clear. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry, I really know my mistake. Lin Ji stood together, with her arms crossed like a vicious queen, looking at Xiao Ling kowtowing with satisfaction. Yun Shishir felt disgusted no matter how she looked at her. She was the one who instigated it, but she pushed all the blame to others. If it were her, she would not do such a thing. She thought about how Lin Ji had sent someone to secretly take photos of her changing clothes. Fortunately, she did not succeed. Just imagining the consequences of letting Lin Ji have her way was enough to make one shudder. Yun Shishir was also secretly angry at herself for being careless. She did not notice that someone had secretly taken photos of her. There was no lack of such ruthless people in the entertainment industry who used such vicious methods to harm others. All right, don't be an eyesore in front of me. I won't forgive you. Yun Shishir said. Lin Ji's expression changed, and she immediately explained, Shishir, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by won't forgive you? Don't you know very well what I mean by that? Yun Shishir snorted coldly. Since ancient times, only villains can be offended. Today, I'll give you a way out, but that doesn't mean that I'm a pushover. If something like this happens again, I'll expose your despicable methods to the media. Lin Ji's eyes turned sharp, but when she caught a glimpse of Mu Yaja and Qinzhou's cold faces, she could only suppress the anger in her heart. There are some things that I have to make clear. I really didn't instruct Xiao Ling to do this. Yun Shishir, you don't have to make oblique accusations. You don't have any evidence to back up your suspicions. I'm not afraid of crooked shadows. You can say whatever you want, but I have a clear conscience. With that, she turned around and kicked Xiao Ling. Why are you still kneeling? Let's go. Xiao Ling stood up with tears in her eyes. She glared hatefully at Yun Shishir and left with Lin Ji. Yun Shishir was speechless. She had seen thick-skinned people, but she had never seen such a thick-skinned person. What a weirdo! Mu Yaja walked to Yun Shishir and sized her up. He frowned and scolded. How could you be so careless? You let someone take advantage of you. Yun Shishir stuck out her tongue. I didn't notice. Bang. Mu Yaja flicked her forehead. Chapter 1481. If he hadn't noticed it in time, who knew what would have happened next? Was this stupid woman so stupid? Qinzhou suddenly asked, Chairman Mu, what a coincidence. You're in Milan too? Yes. Mu Yaja nodded. His meaningful gaze fell on Yun Shishir. Every word he said was extremely ambiguous. I'm in Milan to handle some business. Business? Yun Shirshir almost choked on her saliva. She couldn't be the official business that he was talking about, right? Why did such a plain sentence sound so ambiguous when it came out of his mouth? What a terrible man. Yun Shirshir pouted in her heart. Qin Zhou raised his eyebrows. Chairman Mu, what brings you here today? She'll be my female companion on the red carpet tonight. Qin Zhou was stunned when he heard this. For a moment, his expression was complicated. Previously, Gu Xingze had already told him that Yun Shirshir would be his female companion on the red carpet. Firstly, it could solidify the hype of the couple and promote the upcoming movie. He had already made arrangements with the media. Secondly, it could solidify the remaining hype of the first episode of The Lover's Diary with Yun Shirshir and Xingze, who knew that Mu Yaja would appear out of nowhere. Mu Yaja, however, was unaware of what the manager was thinking. Are you going to wear this tonight? As soon as he finished speaking, he looked down and was suddenly attracted by the gown she was wearing. She had purposely chosen the gown Gu Xingze had sent over today. This gown wasn't considered conservative. It was pulled low at the chest, and the stylist had done his best to squeeze a little cleavage. It was very eye-catching and eye-catching. It was too revealing. The gown was a tube top and had a low-cut design. Her voluptuous breasts were almost on the verge of popping out. Yun Shirshir's body was the type that was skinny but not voluptuous. When Yun Shirshir was a teenager, her breasts weren't so voluptuous. Perhaps it was because she had been breastfeeding, but her breasts were more developed. Coupled with the nipple pads, it was simply impossible for men to take their eyes off her. It was too exposed. It made people involuntarily want to press her down on the bed and ruthlessly humiliate her. Mu Yaja commented in his heart, "Change out of this." He suddenly ordered. Qin Zhou was a little confused. Why? Mu Yaja glanced at him coldly. Don't you think it's too revealing? Qin Zhou was at a loss for words. All right, it was indeed a little exposed, but for a Fashion Week banquet, this was already considered a conservative approach. Some Hollywood actresses even appeared in see-through outfits. Shirshir was already being very conservative. Alas, even if he were given 10 guts, he would not dare to say this in front of the man. Go and exchange for the one I sent over. Mu Yaja's deep voice was filled with unquestionable determination. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips, but there was nothing she could do about it. She did not resist, and could only hug the qipao he sent over to her and enter the fitting room. About 10 minutes later, Yun Shirshir walked out of the fitting room. She walked in front of the mirror and compared herself. Mu Yaja turned sideways to look. However, his originally deep and bottomless eyes suddenly had a flash of amazement. For more than 10 seconds, he was deeply mesmerized by her and could not take his eyes off her. Qin Zhou was also stunned. Chapter 1482. The gown was designed in the style of a cheongsam. The style was pure, just like the style of the old Shanghai cabarets in the 1920s. However, this gown was not a traditional cheongsam. It was a fusion of Chinese and Western elements, a combination of Chinese and Western elements. Unexpectedly, Yun Shirshir looked surprisingly beautiful in it. This gown retained the standing collar, slit, rolled edges, luxurious fabrics, and embroidery. It extended the skirt to the length of the floor, creating a precedent for the cheongsam evening gown. The design of the slit up to the knees weakened the sexy elements and added a bit of royal majesty. The position from the neck to the collarbone was designed with a hollowed-out design. The white skin and sexy collarbone could only be glimpsed, but to a great extent, it interpreted the beauty of the Chinese sex appeal, giving people a kind of looming feeling. The cheongsam was sleeveless, revealing Yun Shirshir's fair shoulders and slender arms. Every stitch and line of the embroidery on the gown was handmade, showing the magnificence of aristocracy. The slit on both sides rose to the hips, but it was just enough to cover it. It was not considered revealing, only a pair of jade legs faintly showing. Such an absolute territory, but it had a slightly heart-throbbing feeling. The waist was tight, and the exquisite figure was perfectly revealed. Looking from afar, it was exquisite and beautiful. Not every woman could interpret the beauty of a cheongsam. When Yun Shirshir put on this gown, people felt that she had lost some of her youthfulness and gained some elegance and magnificence. More importantly, there was a charm that had settled down over time. Women were like flowers, like winter plum blossoms in the snow. They were proud and self-admiring, but with the most arrogant attitude, they looked down on the passing of time elegantly. Yun Shirshir's temperament was more pure, but this gown deepened and subverted her temperament. It became mature and beautiful. Between her eyebrows, there was a seductive look, as if there was an endless charm to it. Even Chinzhou was secretly depressed that he had misjudged the situation. Yun Shirshir's style was no less inferior to the ink-style gown that Mr. Gong had sent over. Beautiful. So beautiful. For a moment, it was hard to find words to describe this ascetic beauty. Mu Yaja did not expect that Yun Shirshir would be so suitable for this dress. When she wore it, she was so beautiful that he could not look straight at her. An enchanting beauty assaulted his face. For a moment, he actually felt his body heating up slightly. Because of her appearance, he couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Deep down in his bones, a man deeply loved the beauty of a woman, which was a bit erotic and a bit ascetic. However, he wished that this beauty belonged to him alone. Yun Shirshir saw his burning gaze on her body. She shyly tugged at her skirt and asked curiously, "How do I look in this?" Mu Yaja suddenly snapped out of his thoughts and slowly took a few steps towards her. "What do you think?" Mu Yaja leaned over, stretched out his arms, and trapped her in his arms. His thin lips were close to her ears, and his breath was like orchids. "My body is heating up just by looking at you. Don't you think it looks good?" Yun Shirshir's face was burning hot. "Hey!" She couldn't help but push him. "Don't be indecent. Can you answer me seriously?" "I'm answering you very seriously." Chapter 1483. Hey! Yun Shirshir did not know whether to laugh or cry. Being stared at by him with such a burning gaze, she could only feel her face heating up. She could not help but feel a little helpless. Mu Yaja lowered his gaze to look at her bashful and timid face. He could not help but nod his head and kiss her. Chinzhou, who was standing by the side, coughed somewhat unwisely. "Ahem. Oh, please. He was still here, all right? Could he not flirt with his woman as if there was no one else around?" Chinzhou spoke up at the wrong time, interrupting Mu Yaja's actions. The man turned his gaze and glanced at Chinzhou with slight displeasure. Even though he only said that he was slightly displeased, when Mu Yaja's somewhat impatient gaze landed on Chinzhou's face, the poor Chinzhou only felt as if he had died 10,000 times in those few seconds of being stared at by him, after filtering through more than 1,000 horrible ways to die in his mind. He felt the urge to retreat. He coughed awkwardly and pretended to be innocent. "Chairman Mu, Shirshir, I still have something to do. I'll make a call first." With that said, the soles of his feet were greased with oil, and he left. Yun Shirshir furrowed her brows in annoyance, and her face burned even more. Why did this man not care about the occasion at all? She pushed him a little angrily. "Hey, even if you're in heat, you should at least look at the occasion." "In heat?" Mu Yaja looked back and glared at her in disbelief. This woman, had she become bold? She actually dared to use the word heat to describe him. "What? Aren't you in heat right now? There's someone else here. Can you be more careful? Ha, let me show you what it means to be in heat, all right? Just as Mu Yaja finished speaking, Yun Shirshir's sixth sense suddenly warned her that the situation was not good. She immediately wanted to avoid him. I still need to do my hair. With that said, she wanted to quickly leave his line of sight. However, who was Mu Yaja? Would he give her a chance to escape? He didn't allow her to resist at all. He just grabbed her waist with one hand and pulled her into his arms. With a bang, he pressed her against the door of the changing room. Yun Shirshir did not even have time to protest before the man nimbly turned her over, forcing her to face the door. Following that, his tall body boldly pressed against her. Even though they were separated by 2 layers of clothes, she could still feel the changes in his body, and her heartbeat became even more rapid. Hey, Mu Yaja, don't act recklessly, Yun Shirshir exclaimed in surprise and said in a low voice. Act recklessly? Mu Yaja's sexy and magnetic voice lingered in her ears, revealing a bit of devilish charm and provocation. Between his words, there was a hint of hidden meaning. You're obviously looking forward to it. Huh? Anticipation? What was there to look forward to? Yun Shirshir bit her lips. Just as she was about to get angry, the man's hand lifted the hem of her cheongsam. She exclaimed and wanted to stop him, but he did not intend to give her the chance. It should be very exciting to do it in the changing room. Mu Yaja, don't do it here. Yun Shirshir blushed, and her heart pounded. She felt his fingers roaming around her body, and for a moment, she panicked. Are you a beast? Even if I'm a beast, I was awakened by you. Your brain is filled with sperm. Beast. Yun Shirshir still could not stop being angry. Mu Yaja curled his lips, and his eyes were playful. Chapter 1484. Yun Shirshir struggled slightly, but in the next second, her wrists were easily restrained by him. He entered her from behind as she resisted slightly. Without any foreplay, it was slightly difficult to enter and exit. However, as his skills deepened, her body gradually relaxed. He pressed on top of her and made love for a long time. When her body went limp, he vented all of it on her body. After everything was over, Yun Shirshir felt that her legs were so weak that she couldn't stand up. Her legs turned to jelly. She gritted her teeth, feeling extremely embarrassed. She could only let herself go limp in his arms and do whatever she wanted. Mu Yaja carried her to the sofa and carefully cleaned her body. There was a sink in the changing room. He took a hot towel and wiped her clean. Yun Shirshir suddenly remembered that he didn't use any safety measures just now. She sat up and glared at him. Hey, just now you, Mu Yaja calmly raised his eyes and looked at her quizzically. Did you wear that? Yun Shirshir blushed and asked. No. A certain man's tone was so righteous that it couldn't be any worse. She flew into a rage out of humiliation. No. Why didn't you use any safety measures? After saying that, she started counting with her fingers. My last period was the safe period should be. After counting for a long time, Yun Shirshir slapped her forehead and said in distress, I'm not on my period today. After thinking about it, she looked as if she was facing death calmly. Forget it. Mu Yaja curled his lips and heard her say seriously, I'll buy some morning after pills later. The man was furious. No. Why not? It's not good for your body to take pills. Yun Shirshir retorted in an unfriendly tone. Hey, you're being unreasonable. If it weren't for the fact that you didn't use any safety measures, would I need to take emergency morning after pills? If I don't take them, it'll be very dangerous. I'm in a dangerous period today. What are you afraid of? Mu Yaja frowned, but he was annoyed by her fuss. I'm not irresponsible. Yun Shirshir was startled. She heard him say, If you are pregnant, you can stay at home and take care of the baby. He dreamed of having another child with her. It would be best if she was a little princess. He dreamed that she could give birth to a daughter for him. He liked daughters very much. If she could give birth to a daughter, he would treasure her in the palm of his hand and give her endless love. Yun Shirshir was stunned for a while, but she said resolutely, "I won't." "You're not." Mu Yaja narrowed, his eyes dangerously. His expression was slightly angry. "Why should I give birth to your child?" "Oh, you think you can give birth to a child just because you want to? You didn't even ask for my opinion." "I don't want to give birth," Yun Shirshir said, unhappily. Mu Yaja suddenly grabbed her chin. "You don't want to?" This woman was actually unwilling to give birth. "Yes, I don't want to." "Why?" "There's no why." Yun Shirshir was silent for a while, then said, "My career is on the rise now. I want to work hard on my career first. Let's put everything else aside for now." "No," Mu Yaja said, unhappily. "Is your so-called career acting? Or is it like today, dressing up beautifully and being followed by the media like stars chasing the moon?" Chapter 1485. He especially didn't like her like this. At first, he didn't approve of her career. It wasn't that he was biased against people from the entertainment industry, but he felt that as a man, it was his duty to provide for his wife. With his wealth, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it wouldn't be a problem to provide for 1,000, 10,000, or even 1,000,000 of her. He felt that she didn't need to work, but back then, she had said that if he were to raise her, she would feel like a canary trapped in a cage with no freedom. She wanted to work and be financially independent. At least, she could earn enough money to support herself. He respected her and silently made way for her. But if it was for work, she had to sacrifice to this extent. He only hoped that her beauty and all the good things she had would be enjoyed by him alone. He didn't want anyone else to covet her beauty. Yun Shirshir furrowed her brows. She was a little unhappy with his evaluation of her work. To her, entering the entertainment industry was a complete coincidence. When she was in university, she majored in media, and her dream was to become an outstanding actress. She liked acting, not because she liked the scenery, but because she liked the arts. She liked to challenge any role that was challenging. Every time her performance was recognized, she would feel a sense of accomplishment from the bottom of her heart. Regarding the issue of children, Yun Shirshir didn't think what Mu Yaja thought. They weren't officially married yet. Wasn't it too early to talk about children? Moreover, she already had 2 children. With Yu Yu and Xiao Chen, she didn't dare to take the risk. If she had another child, would Yu Yu reject it? Would Xiao Chen reject it? When the time came, what if Yu Yu couldn't accept the arrival of a new life? Not to mention these 2 little guys. Even she herself wasn't prepared. Hence, Yun Shirshir held his face and said coquettishly, "Let's not talk about this now, okay? I'm not ready yet. Moreover, I'm not your wife in name. Why should I give birth to your children?" Mu Yaja's gaze froze for a moment before he circled his arms around her waist. "You'll be my wife, Mu Yaja. You don't have to think about this at all. You want to marry me, but I may not be willing." Yun Shirshir coldly snorted and said somewhat haughtily. Mu Yaja narrowed, his eyes dangerously. "What? Are you not willing to be my wife?" Yun Shirshir lifted her jade-like chin and smiled gracefully. "That depends on your sincerity." As soon as she finished speaking, she pushed him away and stood up. Lifting the hem of her dress, she turned around and walked to the full-length mirror. The brightest design of this gown was the side of the hemline. It was a skirt-like design with black organza that extended to the ground. It was very beautiful. She looked at the mirror and struck a pose, looking proud and confident. At this moment, Yun Shirshir was definitely the most beautiful. Actually, there was one thing that she didn't say. One of the reasons why she wanted to become an actress was because he was such an outstanding man. Before becoming his wife, she wanted to become more outstanding, to become someone who was worthy of him. Yun Shirshir looked at the mirror and lifted her chin slightly. Her lips curled into a beautiful smile. Suddenly, Mu Yaja's calm voice came from behind her. "Walk the red carpet with me tonight." Chapter 1486. Tonight? You're going to? Yun Shirshir looked at the suit he was wearing. She did not realize why he was dressed so formally. Was he invited to tonight's banquet too? Mu Yaja replied. "You will be my female companion." Yun Shirshir was stunned. She suddenly remembered that Gu Xingze had asked her to walk the red carpet with him. So she said that, No, why not? Mu Yaja obviously could not accept her answer. "Give me a reason." Yun Shirshir smiled elegantly and seemed to be provoking him. "Mr. Mu, I have an appointment. Is that a reason?" Mu Yaja snorted coldly. Rejected. How could he not know that Gu Xingze had asked Yun Shirshir to walk the red carpet with him tonight? Would he allow it to happen? Only two things would happen tonight. Either she would walk the red carpet with him, or she would not be able to attend the banquet tonight. She would be tied to the plane and go home directly. It was that simple and crude. Did he want his woman to attend the banquet as another man's female companion? Would he sit back and do nothing about it? Yun Shirshir was speechless. "You left the company and came to Milan. Why are you joining in the fun?" Mu Yaja replied, "Because there are always some people who are not self-aware and are coveting my woman. I'm worried." His straightforwardness made Yun Shirshir blush. She narrowed her eyes and smiled helplessly. "Chairman Mu, aren't you thinking too much? Who would dare to covet your woman? Are you paranoid about being persecuted?" Mu Yaja suddenly stood up and slowly approached her until he was right in front of her. He leaned forward slightly and hugged her waist, pulling her towards him. Yun Shirshir fell into his arms. He whispered in her ear, "I'll give you two choices. Either you walk the red carpet with me, or you pack your luggage and go home. You choose." "You're threatening me." Yun Shirshir gritted her teeth in anger as she glared at him. "So what?" Mu Yaja smiled provocatively and said evilly, "You want to bite me?" Yun Shirshir was so angry that her face turned red, but she heard a certain man say in a noble and cold manner, "Miss Yun, please don't be ignorant of your good fortune. There are so many female celebrities lining up to walk the red carpet with me, but I only chose you. Didn't Qin Zhou's team always want to give you exposure? Isn't this a great opportunity?" Yun Shirshir narrowed her eyes. However, Mu Yaja said slowly, "Qin Zhou asked Gu Xingze to walk the red carpet with you because he wanted to create hype. Then, wouldn't I be more suitable as the target of the hype?" Yun Shirshir was speechless. Half an hour later, Yun Shirshir was done with her styling. When she walked out of the VIP room with Mu Yaja, Qin Zhou was standing outside the door, smoking. When he saw them holding each other's arms, he choked on the smoke. What was going on? "Shirshir, what's going on?" Qin Zhou was a little confused. "Tonight, she's walking the red carpet with me," Mu Yaja said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Zhou was stunned. "What? Yun Shirshir was walking the red carpet with Boss Mu? Did the sun rise from the west?" Although Mu Yaja was the big boss of Huanyu, he had never walked the red carpet with a woman in all these years. Qin Zhou suddenly thought of the relationship between Yun Shirshir and Mu Yaja. Oh, he wasn't that surprised. Chapter 1487. Qinzhou was happy that Boss Mu was willing to walk the red carpet with Yun Shirshir. Nonsense! Why wouldn't he do something good that could increase Yun Shirshir's exposure? If Mu Yaja was to accompany Shirshir to the banquet, it would be a glorious thing. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because of Mu Yaja's status. Moreover, he had never attended such a banquet before. This was the first time, and probably the only time. Just when Yun Shirshir thought that Qinzhou was going to flip out, she saw him rubbing his hands with a smile. He looked very excited. Shirshir, you will walk the red carpet with Chairman Mu tonight. You must perform well. With Chairman Mu around, you will definitely be on the front page tomorrow. The corners of Yun Shirshir's lips twitched violently, feeling as if she had been sold off. She felt like she had the world with Mu Yaja at the banquet of Milan Fashion Week. As a guest invited by the organizer, Mu Yaja naturally had to be the finale. Thanks to him, Yun Shirshir, who had been arranged to enter the venue in the first half, was now the finale. It was autumn and the weather was a little cold. Especially at night, when the cold wind blew, it was bone-piercing, and the chill was at its peak. Before they left, Qinzhou specially gave Yun Shirshir a mink cashmere jacket to protect her from the cold wind. Although the weather was very cold, the atmosphere on the red carpet was very lively. There was a heated competition of attractiveness, and the female celebrities were trying their best to show off their beauty on the red carpet, desperately trying to attract the attention of the cameras. Amidst the flashing lights, the celebrities stood in front of the cameras, constantly striking poses and posing coquettishly. They were wearing as little clothing as they could. The Bentley was parked not far from the entrance. As it was the finale, Yun Shirshir couldn't enter yet. She could only sit in the car and observe the scene outside the car window. As she watched, she was speechless. Why were these female celebrities wearing so little fabric? Some even wore see-through outfits that only covered a few important parts. In the cold wind, they were still stretching their limbs and posing elegantly. It looked so cold, Yun Shirshir's lips twitched. Generally speaking, the red carpet was a battlefield. The female celebrities dressed up carefully just for this moment to be the center of attention. Media from both domestic and foreign countries had gathered. The periphery of the red carpet was almost packed with people. At a glance, it was a sea of people. The only time she walked the red carpet was at Huan Yu's annual cocktail party. However, the scale of the Milan Fashion Gala was incomparable to Huan Yu's. It was more pretentious and had more media coverage. If she could leave her name on the red carpet, it would be more useful than shooting a few more literary films. At the same time, there was another person who was secretly competing. Han Yuyen hid in the car and refused to get out. According to the organizer's arrangement, she should have made an appearance long ago. However, she refused to get out of the car. Even though the organizer in charge of the red carpet kept urging her, she still ignored him and refused to get out of the car. Because she had not seen Yun Shirshir walk the red carpet yet. Yun Shirshir, this be *TCH, was just a newcomer, and she was already thinking of being the finale. Dream on. Anyway, if Yun Shirshir didn't leave, she wouldn't make an appearance either. At most, they would just wait and see who could outlast the other. Chapter 1488. As Han Yuyen thought about it, she stayed in the car and did not move. It was Lin Ji's turn. She wore a splendid dress and exquisite makeup. She was beautiful and dazzling. When she walked on the red carpet, the foreign reporters did not recognize her. They were not interested in her, so they whispered to each other. The domestic media was extremely excited. They raised their cameras and took pictures of her like crazy. Lin Ji kept waving at the media. It was rare for her to walk the red carpet, so she enjoyed the attention of everyone. Even when the security guards came up to maintain order and let her in quickly, she still refused to leave the red carpet and kept blowing kisses at the media. In the end, he had no choice but to be half-dragged and half-dragged by the security guard. Han Yuyin sat in the car. When she saw this scene, she sneered. Country bumpkin. She had not seen the world. She did not know how this Lin Ji got into the Milan fashion show. She came here to make a fool of herself. What a disgrace. She did not want to walk with such a person and be compared to her. It would be degrading. On the list, only Mu Yaja, Yun Shirshir, and Han Yuyin had not made their appearance. The person in charge of the red carpet ran over to invite Han Yuyin. Han Yuyin asked, "When is Yun Shirshir leaving?" "What do you mean?" "When she leaves, I'll leave after her. How can we let her be the finale at such a big event? For this final scene, you should let someone of my level come to control the situation." The person in charge curled his lips contemptuously. This Han Yuyin was really naive. Naturally, Yun Shirshir would not be the last to appear. She probably did not know that Yun Shirshir and Mu Yaja were walking the red carpet together. "You're really not leaving?" The person in charge was running out of patience. In order to invite this person to the red carpet, he had gone back and forth several times. He had been polite at the beginning, but now his patience was running out. If she did not leave, he would not invite her again. However, Han Yuyin had already made up her mind. She made her stand clear and emphasized, "I want to walk the red carpet after Yun Shirshir." As soon as he finished speaking, the person in charge left helplessly. Han Yuyin closed the car door and rolled her eyes mockingly. "Yun Shirshir, you want to fight with me?" He was still too inexperienced. The red carpet was nearing its end. All of the media were eagerly waiting to find out who the big shot would be at the end of the show. The scene was still very lively. This was a rare fashion event in Italy. It was Mu Yaja's first time walking the red carpet in Milan with a female partner, and it was also Yun Shirshir's first time appearing in front of the cameras with him. She was so nervous that she almost suffocated. Yun Shirshir clasped her hand over her heart and looked at the flashing spotlights on the red carpet. For a moment, all the spotlights were on, and it was as bright as day, illuminating the silent night. Mu Yaja saw her taking deep breaths and smiled. His originally cold eyes were filled with gentleness and affection. "Nervous?" "Yes, a little." Yun Shirshir did not mince her words. It was embarrassing to say that this was the first time she had seen such a big event. There were hundreds and thousands of reporters from different countries all over the world. Now they were all gathered together to witness this glittering fashion event. In the crowded crowd, the bodyguards were trying their best to maintain order.